Well, we are standing by here to begin the proceedings today. Well, here is the Sergeant at Arms.
Let us pray.
As we prepare to be about the business of the people of this nation, it is my prayer that all persons concerned will be cognizant of the awesome responsibility placed upon them at this time to look after matters for the welfare and well-being of all persons. It is also my prayer that you will be conscious of the sanctity of this chamber, and as such, your conduct would reflect same. Further, that you be cognizant of the account that you must give one day to the great Almighty of the stewardship you exercise here in this place and at this time. Almighty God, by whom all kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of God, the fellowship of the Holy Spirit, be with us all evermore. Amen.
Amen. Announcements. Good morning, Senators. I have received correspondence from the Speaker of the House of Assembly advising that the Appropriation 2023-2024 bill, deemed a money bill in accordance with the provisions of Article 49(2) of the St. Lucia Constitution Order 1978, was passed in the House of Assembly and forwarded to the Senate for its concurrence. I have received an excuse from Senator Angelina Polius, who is unable to attend today's sitting. Statement by ministers. Appointment of sessional committees. Senators, pursuant to Standing Orders 67 to 70, we need to appoint sessional committees. The four committees are the Standing Orders Committee, the House Committee, Committee of Privileges, and the Regulations Committee. The question I wish to put to you is whether we should keep the same membership, and I shall now inform you of the members of each committee. Standing Orders Committee, Honorable Dr. Pauline Antoine, Senator Alison Jean, Senator Polius, Senator Aziz. House Committee, myself, Chair, Senator Antoine, Senator Joahir, Senator Fede, Senator Aziz. Committee of Privileges, myself, Chair, Leader of Government Business, Senator Honorable Ferdinand, Senator Joahir, Senator Stanislas, and Deputy President Senator Lee. Regulations Committee, Chair, Senator Ferdinand, Leader of Government Business, Senator Jean, Senator Charles Toussaint, Senator Fede, and Deputy President Senator Lee. Leader of Government Business, what say you?
Madam President, I propose that we retain the committees as they stand at this point unless a member wishes to indicate otherwise.
Are there any members who may have a different view? Okay, so we remain as is. Thank you, Senators. Papers to be laid. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 34 of 2023. Community Tourism, appointment of the Board of the Community Tourism Agency notice. Statutory Instrument Number 35 of 2023. Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Carib Invest Capital Limited, Amendment Order. Statutory Instrument Number 36 of 2023, Price Control Amendment Number 5 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 37 of 2023, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 5 Order. Economic and Social Review 2022.
Bills. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Appropriations 2023-2024.
Appropriation 2023-2024.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to enable this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that the Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of this bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Appropriation 2023-2024. Before I proceed with my substantive presentation, Madam President, I wish to draw the attention of the Senate to the fact that today is the sitting of the final phase of the Caribbean Primary Exit Exam known as the CPEA, and so our students of grade 6 are presently writing this exam, or the final phase of this change exam. So I want to extend the best wishes to them as a former educator and always an educator. I want to extend best wishes to them and hope that they are successful in their endeavors. Madam President, this morning I stand here in support of this bill as presented by the Prime Minister and our leader in this challenge and in this time, as we seek to restore some measure of stability and see some measure of prosperity for our country. Madam President, I note that this bill 2023, Appropriation 2023-2024, sets out to achieve the objective of sincerity based on a spirit of integrity, inclusion, and ensures that there is something for every single sector, every single person in this country. And it is my hope that when the projects, the policies, and the implementation phase comes in, that we will see the benefits to the people of this country. Madam President, I know that some may have tried with a lot of dramatics up to today to take away the attention from the substance of this debate. But I want to remind the Senate that our business in this chamber is a substantive bill and the business of the people of St. Lucia. And that is why I'm here as leader of government business to present my contribution and support for this bill. Madam President, as established by the Honorable Prime Minister, the priorities of this bill or this budget are clearly focusing on health and security as well as economic sustainability. It is very clear that at this time we have been faced with challenges, some beyond us, some beyond our shores, that have serious implications for our survival as an economy, our security, and our health. Madam President, the policies that are presented through this bill are premised on the understanding that a healthy and safe society is needed to achieve stability and economic prosperity. Madam President, the principles of integrity, participation, meritocracy, prosperity are going to be enjoyed by all based on the way in which we propose to go about in this financial year. Madam President, while trying to achieve all of this, we must be mindful of the external factors. The issue of inflation, the threat of war among nations beyond our shores that are powerful, the inevitable and constant threat of climate change, where we can see our entire GDP being written off overnight because of our location and our size. So, Madam President, we must bear in mind that while we proceed in this direction, that all of these must be taken into consideration. Madam President, it's important to put into context where we are at now when we reflect on where we were a few years ago. So allow me to take you back to 2019, Madam President, where we were faced with a deficit of 33%, a primary deficit in our economy. And that was just before COVID. And Madam President, within a period of two and a half, 3 years, we are now able to realize a primary surplus of 29%. And Madam President, if you do the math, a minus 33 plus to get to a positive 29, that represents a significant growth. I'll allow those who are mathematically inclined to do the figures. Madam President, St. Lucia recorded the second highest growth rate in the region, second only to Guyana, and we know about the exploits. This growth, Madam President, did not happen by a snap of the finger. After being in government for more than a year and a half, the St. Lucia Labour Party government must be given some measure of credit for what is happening with our economic growth. Now, I will not try to suggest that no one else should take credit, because before we came into office, there were people working hard and there were governments in office before us. But I must say that we must share in the success, and we must continue to ensure that every St. Lucian benefits from the success of the government as far as the economy goes. Madam President, real GDP growth, we have experienced over 18%, and key sectors have grown. And these key sectors are the sectors that have contributed significantly to where we are today. And I want to identify the tourism sector, which registered the greatest growth in that regard. 50%, 58%, Madam President. And I want to commend all of our stakeholders in tourism for that. When I get to that specific area, I will elaborate. Agriculture, Madam President, we saw an 11% growth in that sector. Manufacturing, also, we saw improvement. And as a result, we can now report that there's lower unemployment rates that exist. The lowest since 2010, Madam President. This is significant, and we must celebrate this, because over and over I've come to this House, and both the opposition and the government have spoken about their concerns regarding unemployment in this country, particularly youth unemployment. Madam President, we are nowhere near where we want to be. I will be the first to admit that we need to continue to lower the unemployment rates in this country, particularly youth unemployment. However, it is very clear that we are trending in the right direction. And I'm hoping that we recognize that this budget seeks to continue to help us to do so. Madam President, we know that there is a serious issue of debt, particularly what we inherited in 2021 when we came into government. And I would like to report, Madam President, that at this time, we are in a position where we are reducing on the debt that we inherited. This gives us some space, Madam President, some fiscal space to operate, to be able to offer our St. Lucian population some of the goodies that I will be referring to, and my colleagues will definitely do as we go on with this debate. So, Madam President, let me bring some focus to one of the main sectors, and that is commerce and business development. Madam President, you may have heard of the SMME, the Small, Medium, Micro Enterprise Facility, which the Ministry of Commerce recently rolled out. $10 million, Madam President, has been secured for that particular initiative. It is a loan grant facility where the persons who qualify will be able to receive 70% of their needs or their financial request via grant and 30% via loan at very concessionary rates. Madam President, this morning while I was driving down, in the news I was hearing that the banks in the US, especially the central bank, have increased their rates, their interest rates, because they're trying to recover. Banks are collapsing all over the world. And here we are in this 238 square miles, Madam President, telling small business people in this country, telling micro enterprises in this country that they can benefit from a facility that provides 70% grant funding that they do not have to pay back, and 30% loan funding at concessionary rates that they will not be able to get at any bank. Madam President, just think about the implications of that facility. And I will say that in Creole. Madam President, let tout banque l'autre pays qu'a mené l'intérêt monté, qu'a fait plus difficile pour moun prêter l'argent. Nous anti cette lici, qu'a bail cette licien en opportunité pour yo ça joindre, ça nous qu'a créé un grant, l'argent ou qu'a joindre et pour pas ni pour payer. Et puis 70% en ça nous ka ba yo a, c'est ça yo pas ni pour payer. Et puis seulement 30% c'est ça yo ni pour vivre payer. Et puis ça nous ka l'intérieur nous ka mettre là ou passage joindre ça à pièce banque. Madam President, this facility I believe is going to transform the small business sector in this country. And don't forget that any economy that thrives does not thrive because of the big businesses and the macro and the mega businesses that are operating, but it is because of the small businesses. That is where the real growth is impacted. And so, Madam President, I want to commend the Prime Minister for that initiative in collaboration with the Ministry and the Minister and the Ministry of Commerce. Along with this SMME initiative is inclusive of technical support and capacity building. So, Madam President, we're not only giving people money, we're not only giving people loans, we're also giving them technical support. If they are not sure about how to write business proposals, if they are not sure about how to prepare, organize their cash flow, and other very essential requirements of having a successful business, that is also included in the package. And so, Madam President, I believe that this is a transformational move by this government. Madam President, e-commerce and digitization, we have 4 platforms being worked on for the digitization of our businesses. And now we hear about cryptocurrency and all of those modern techniques of doing business. We have to remain relevant and on par. And I am pleased to see that this is a move that we are actually embarking on, and that should bring us on par with what is going on in the current environment where business is done. Madam President, there is collaboration between the Ministry of Agriculture, the Bureau of Standards, and other agencies to improve standards of delivery of goods and services. For example, calibrating meters and other instruments to ensure that the quality and standards that we are offering are of the highest. Madam President, we continue to work on increasing our exports. And as you know, if you bring down the exports, or if you bring down the import bill and you improve the exports, your economy must do well. And so, along with the Ministry of Commerce and our Ministry of Agriculture and other sectors, we are increasing, exploring the larger markets in the region. For example, Guyana, things are really nice there now, so it's a good time for us to reach out to them and explore export opportunities. We believe that trade, international and regional trade, is going to help us if we continue to export to improve our economic situation. And so, Madam President, we also notice that there is support for cooperatives. And cooperatives are like small financial agencies that help to stabilize the economy, not just the big banks. And I'm happy that our government has continued to give support to the cooperatives. The cannabis industry, Madam President, is also going to be getting a lot of support to continue to explore the opportunities in that industry. As you know, some time ago, we passed the bill that allows for the medicinal use of cannabis, but we also believe that there is opportunity in business and in an industry where cannabis is concerned. Madam President, the much talked about call centers. I remembered in the debates, some said that if we win the elections, we are going to close all call centers. And there are hundreds of young people who are working in these call centers who decided not to vote or who were told not to support the Labour Party because if we win the elections, there'll be no call centers. Madam President, I am happy to report that not only did we retain and keep all these call centers going, but that we are going to continue to engage KM2, BPO, and the others to expand that area. And I think these initiatives will continue to encourage the youth and persons interested in that sector to do well. So, Madam President, in addition, we are looking at subsidizing, and we have been doing that, the price of goods, basic commodities like flour, to keep the price of bread at an affordable rate. Cooking gas. I have heard a lot of talk about cooking gas, Madam President. We are subsidizing cooking gas heavily, and we propose to continue to do so until our economy and our people are able to do better. Madam President, I saw a bag of groceries in this chamber, and it reminded me of a similar exercise by a senator colleague who came here with something in a bag from Soufrière, he proposed that it was the condition of sugar that I really thought was mud from the sulfur springs. It looks like these theatrics and antics are trying to suggest to our people that they are not getting value for their dollar on the things or the commodities that are being sold to them. But Madam President, it is only because we've subsidized so heavily that our people have been cushioned from the serious blow of inflation and the effects of what is happening outside. Madam President, I want to also remind the Senate that while others use a platform in Soufrière called Old Trafford to call people names and to abuse individuals and persons, I am very happy to hear that the MP for Choiseul and the Ministry of Commerce was in that same location last weekend with the vendors of this association and was able to launch a vendors association with 91 members. 91 members in the town of Soufrière. And I think she was right when she said she had come to this place to sanitize it. I think that is a very appropriate statement, because when people use certain platforms to create, discomfort and abuse and insults, we are going to sanitize by offering opportunities to our vendors and opportunities to our people. So therein lies, Madam President, the fundamental difference between us and those who are supposed to be on the opposite side, although I don't see them today. Madam President, allow me now to move to the area of health care. I did indicate from my introduction that health was identified by the Honorable Prime Minister as a major area of concern and a strong focus area in this 2023-2024 Appropriations Bill. Madam President, we have realized serious gains in key areas of health, and we are trying to ensure that quality health care that is accessible and affordable is provided for our people. Madam President, our public welfare assistance at primary health care facilities continues to be rolled out. We have identified centers of excellence promoting particular aspects of health. We have also increased our assistance for elderly care. We've increased the access to primary health care, and that includes access on weekends. Madam President, you would know that most of the health centers and the primary health care facilities open during the week but are not available to the public during the weekend. We are exploring changing that and making those facilities available also on weekends. And that is why we are trying to get the Castries Polyclinic on the way. Madam President, primary health care facilities in the communities of Larishus, Soufrière and Castries are being given attention and will be part of this budget, and the expenditure that we have put aside, some of it will be spent on them. Remedial work will continue on OKEU, Madam President. I want to now mention a very interesting and exciting idea that I heard from the Minister for Health. He mentioned the Golden 80+ medical package. I look forward to that, Madam President. We in this country must continue to show respect and appreciation for our elderly folk. We need to care for them. One day, if we are lucky enough, every one of us in this House, in the Senate, if we are lucky enough to get to 80, we'll be grateful if the generation after us looks behind and takes care of us. So, Madam President, I look forward to that initiative, and perhaps some of my colleagues will tell you a little bit more about it. Madam President, we are establishing a cancer registry, establishing an elderly affairs unit in the Ministry of Health. All of these, Madam President, are incremental steps towards providing universal health care, which is our primary objective. Madam President, St. Jude Hospital their workers at St. Jude Hospital will be receiving their back pay. Tax-free, I heard? Yes. Back pay. I don't know anybody who doesn't like the idea of back pay. And Madam President, they deserve it because they have endured for years in the stadium. They have endured during COVID. And I think it is fair that they be rewarded with their back pay. Madam President, over $200 million will be spent on health care, and that does not include the St. Jude Hospital and what we call the box. Madam President, work continued on the St. Jude Hospital facility from November of last year, and we continue work on that facility with very strong focus to deliver to the people of this country at the soonest possible time. Permit me now, Madam President, to briefly move to the area of housing and physical development. This is a very important part of our social development in our country. Proper housing and access to land is one of the areas that differentiates between people who live in acceptable conditions and those who do not. Madam President, through the rationalization of land with Proud, there is going to be opportunities for people in Dennery North, Beaufort South, and a housing development is on the way through a major investor, and I will get to that when we talk about the CIP. Madam President, we know that Invest St. Lucia has had some challenges, and I recently attended a meeting in my capacity in this ministry, where I was very pleased to know that some of these lands will be vested in Proud, so that they can be made available to the people of the South, the people on the East Coast and other parts of this country at rates that they can afford, and that they will be able to have decent, proper housing and access to land. And I am looking forward to the impact that will make on our people. We're not going to give away acres of land in the South. We are giving people access to land by making it affordable and available to them. Madam President, you would have heard of the reduction of VAT on building materials. And that brings a big smile to my face, because I know that this is going to stimulate the construction sector, Madam President. Madam President, once building materials, cement, steel, plywood, and the likes are more affordable, I know that persons who are part of this sector, and maybe those who are always trying to get a break through this sector, will benefit. So I applaud the Prime Minister for that initiative. Madam President, Crown lands, again in the South, in areas of Lafargue, I know my colleague sitting next to me will be happy to hear that, Labrie are earmarked for development in this fiscal year. Reduction of, Madam President, I mentioned a reduction of VAT already. Speaking of land and making land available, we have now made available a parcel of land for our star athlete Julian Alfred. So you see, we know there are people in this country who deserve a piece of St. Lucia, and before we go too far with it, we ensure that our star athlete is one of those who is going to benefit. We'll talk about Julian Alfred. I'm sure there are others among us who will talk about her a little later. Madam President, land for expansion of cemeteries. Right now we have some issues giving people a decent send-off and a decent place to be laid to lay their bodies. And cemeteries for expansion would include Dennery North and Beaufort South. Madam President, low-cost housing is another area that we have looked at. Over 100 low-cost houses and lots, Madam President, will be made available in the Masque area and other developments. I am pleased to mention, Madam President, that the community that I am from, I'm not in charge of a constituency, but I believe I live in a community. And I am pleased to mention that the community of Wishbois in Tiroche in Miku South will be benefiting from land development, as 46 lots are going to be made available for the people in this community at concessionary rates. And believe me, Madam President, I know quite a few people, my neighbors, supporters, non-supporters, friends and all, are very excited about that prospect. Madam President, equity and social development. We are a government with a conscience, a social conscience. And in everything we do, we ensure that we provide opportunities for those who may not always be in a position where they are fortunate. Madam President, and this government has decided to increase the contributions to the School for the Blind, the National Council for People with Disabilities, the Special Education Center. These are groups of people we must pay attention to. Madam President, among the vulnerable are students, and so that is why we continue to increase school bursaries and educational assistance for our students. And I'm sure my parliamentary secretary from the Ministry of Education will tell you more about it. Madam President, our farmers with disabilities will form part of the beneficiaries. All of our homes and centers that care for elderly persons will be getting a boost. And the Prime Minister made a number of announcements. Each time in his announcement, there was an increase in the allocation for these centers. So, Madam President, as the economy grows, as the pie gets bigger, we share it. And we share it with those who need it most. Madam President, the distress fund has been reinstated. I need to say no more about that, because we know the value of it to people who lose their homes in tragic circumstances. Madam President, over $1 million is being invested in housing assistance through the Ministry of Equity. So we have housing coming through the Ministry of Physical Development and Housing, also through the Ministry of Equity, but in that case it is targeted to people with specific social problems. Madam President, over $17 million will be distributed through the SSDF for social interventions. And I can tell you, I'm on the ground, and every single day, Madam President, I come across situations where people, either it's medical care, educational needs, some kind of issue that they cannot deal with and they require support. And that is why these funds are made available to assist. $43 million will be foregone in subsidized costs of cooking gas, which I mentioned earlier. The government has subsidized from between $19 and $30 per cylinder. I mean, just think about what it would cost us with all what's going on in Ukraine and Russia if the government did not subsidize on the cost of cooking gas. Madam President, so when people posture as if they care, this is where we are showing that we care. Madam President, I also want to mention the HOPE program. That program, we have identified 766 vulnerable persons who will be receiving assistance. The Affordable Flow Bundle is one of the other interventions that we are putting forward and offering families who may not have been able to afford internet access at the regular rate. Madam President, a total of $10 million has been identified and allocated to the Basic Needs Trust Fund. And again, that is for social interventions around the island, including opposition constituencies. I have heard announcements where interventions are being made in Choiseul, Saltibus, and in Mikusau. So we are not excluding anybody. Everybody is included. Madam President, there is allocation available for the training of 30 single mothers to become self-employed and to graduate them out of public assistance. So we are not keeping people dependent on the state all the time. We're training them, building their capacity, and I'm sure Senator Jawahir, who always speaks on behalf of the vulnerable and single mothers, very passionate about it, will be happy to hear that we are doing so. Madam President, I now quickly move to agriculture. And I remembered saying, as when we started, that this is one of the sectors where we saw some growth. And I can see why the Prime Minister has decided to boost that industry, because when agriculture does well, it supports tourism. And when tourism and agriculture are doing well, you're in business. So, Madam President, I want to brief this House on some of the interventions and initiatives in the area of agriculture. Madam President, this sector, as I said, has expanded. And what it has done is that it has complemented tourism. Because through tourism, we've also ensured that we have We are going to come here with a bill, Madam President, soon, and I'll talk about it when I mention tourism, where it will allow for greater participation by our people in the sector. And that is one of the areas, to be able to absorb some of what, or well, not some, but more of what we are producing into the sector. So, Madam President, food security is an area of key focus. Expansion of livestock. Over 10% we saw growth in that area. And fisheries. And speaking of fisheries, you would have heard of the announcement of the rebate for our fishers. Madam President, we have never had that opportunity. The fishers have clamored many years. They said there are no roads on the sea, and when gas tax was put on them, they didn't benefit. Well, I'm here to announce, Madam President, that there will be a rebate for them. Madam President, the 7 crop program continues to be expanded, and that will be helping to make inputs available for farmers. The banana industry, Madam President, we know that there have been challenges. Securing markets is a challenge. Increasing production is a challenge. But we are complementing this with other sectors: cocoa, honey, CMOS. We have 60 drying tables that have been provided for our CMOS farmers. Value added. That means we are going to try to get the products, the raw materials, to produce other things. So I look forward to that. Madam President, the Minister for Agriculture announced 9,000 bags of fertilizer that will be subsidized to help increase the production of our bananas. Hundreds of seeds and seedlings are being made available to our farmers. Madam President, fisheries. The Castries, Vieux-Fort, Dennery and Choiseul facilities will be getting attention. I hope my colleague next to me heard that. Yes, we are not only going into one area, we're all around the island in terms of improvement to our fisheries facilities. The tracking devices will be provided for the fishers, and we've heard of a number of our fishermen going out and not returning and cannot be found. 300 of these tracking devices, Madam President, will be sourced to assist our fishers. 52 devices, Madam President, have already been installed. So that's 52 fishermen who are a little bit safer than they were before. And we are going to continue to make it easy, or easier for them in times where they may venture out of port. Madam President, FADs are also being made available. We have started in Soufrière, in Vieux-Fort, and in Dennery. And we will be setting up a few more in areas. I'm happy to hear Miku on the East Coast, and Ansari and on the West Coast, and Grosele in the North. This is going to help increase the yield and make the fishermen more efficient in terms of their practice. Madam President, back to the rebate. You heard the Prime Minister announcing $1 per gallon rebate for the fishers, and I have mentioned how important we think this is. Madam President, I now move to the economic development revenue measures. With all the things that I have mentioned so far, we are not going to be able to pay for some of the services that we are offering our people if we do not have a clear strategy as to how we are going to raise the money to do so. And when we raise the money, we also have to be able to find a balance between what we are raising, what efforts and sacrifices the population has to make, and how we give back and reward the people for their sacrifices. And so, Madam President, I want to now mention the health and security levy of 2.5%. I have heard quite a lot of discussion about it. Some have tried to use it and equate it to VAT increase. Some have tried to cry about it and make it seem as if it's the worst thing we've ever done. Madam President, the health and security levy of 2.5% will be placed on specific items, and I want to make it very clear, not including food and medicine. I'll repeat, Madam President, 2.5% levy nous ka mette à sous pour santé et puis sécurité. Nous pas kay mette à sous manger et puis nous pas kay mette à sous we met. So I want someone to tell me if cigarettes contribute to lung disease, cancer, and heart disease. And I say to my people, let us put a tax on cigarettes. And that tax money, let us use it to help to prevent cancer, heart disease, and lung disease. I think that makes sense. That makes sense. So we're not taxing food and we're not taxing medicine. So we are very clear as to what this 2.5% levy is. Madam President, the removal of VAT on plywood and steel, as I mentioned before, and other building materials will stimulate the housing sector and the construction sector. But I want to say, Madam President, we have to monitor this. Because when you put these policies in place, you must monitor so that the revenue that is foregone, you want to make sure that your suppliers are not being unfair to your consumers, that they are not charging them for what you have foregone, and if they collect revenue, that the state receives it. So we'll be monitoring it. Madam President, the extension of tax amnesty for the business sector for yet another year. For those of us who think that the Labour Party is all about Maliwe and poor people, that is not correct, Madam President. The Labour Party is about everybody, everyone. We have businessmen who have come through the roots of the Labour Party and are doing well. There are people who are legitimate, successful business people who understand the philosophy of the Labour Party, and that is why we are providing them with an additional year for tax amnesty. And I must say, Madam President, since the introduction last year, we have seen an increase in the collection of these taxes. So it's working. We're removing the penalties and the fines, we're waiving it, and if you pay your taxes by the 1st of May 2024, then you will not be paying those penalties. And so we look forward to the acceleration of the payments and the benefits of that particular facility. Madam President, our fiscal and economic measures are supposed to be bringing balance to the way we operate. So, effective July 1st, 2023, we will have no withholding taxes to apply to the following: $10,000 or less than $10,000 on small contracts. Small contracts. Musicians, the people in the creative industry. You know what it feels like when you get a little gig for $7,000. By the time you pay for the overheads, you're left with maybe $3,000 or $2,000 profit, and that has to be taxed. So sometimes you make people more angry when they do a little gig and they hear it's a $7,000 gig, but they only have $2,000 or less to take home, and that is not fair. So we believe that these numbers, when you are below 10,000, that we should remove the withholding tax on this. Madam President, I've already mentioned the rebate, and I want to finally mention one of the things that we are giving back from all these that I mentioned before is an increase to maybe the most dearest people that I can relate to in this country, and that is to teachers. I don't know why they didn't do that while I was a teacher. I never got that, Madam President, for all these years. But it's okay. It's better sometimes to give than to receive. So I'm happy that I am not on the receiving end, but I'm part of a government that is saying to teachers that we are increasing your teacher materials allowance, your TMA, to $1,100, from $600 to $1,100. Madam President, I know teachers form part of the largest group of employees in this country. I know that they are looking forward to the end of the month of August to collect that materials allowance. And trust me, Madam President, they are not using these monies to go and buy phones and shoes. Our teachers, I know, my spouse is a teacher. I was one, and I still am very close to many of them. I talk to them. There are teachers who use their little income to, you would not believe the things they do. I've had to buy television. I've had to see my carpet taken away and brought to school. Pillows, stuff for beds, all kinds of things that teachers do to assist children. So when you give them that allowance, it really is to say to them, we understand the sacrifices you make. Here's a little something that will help you to continue to make that sacrifice. That's what it is. It's not about, I hear some people jumping on it. So Madam President, that takes me to education. Madam President, on Monday, I heard the opposition was beating up on that TMA increase. When you choose to beat up on certain things, sometimes you have to have some discretion and decide what to leave alone. how could you be beating up on something that the country is doing for the people entrusted, that our children are entrusted in their care? How could you beat up on that? And so I'm still trying to get a logic in it, saying that we don't run a country by giving teachers money. Well, Madam President, I know the teachers do not agree with that, and the teachers will thank us for it one day. Madam President, education, as I've always said, is perhaps one of the most important sectors, because it is through education that we groom, mold, and develop our next generation and our labor force. Madam President, we know that the education is governed by laws through the Education Act. And I've always been in this Senate as a spokesperson for education. In fact, when I was in opposition, that was my role. But now I have a lot more support, so I'll leave some of it to my colleague. But Madam President, I must say that it is true that our Education Act from 1999 has seen some time. And at this stage, with what's going on around the world, with all the changes, the introduction of all these technologies and social behavior and the way people do things, we need to revisit the Act, because it is the legal guide, basically the Bible, for the operations of schools. And I'm happy to hear that we are going to be reviewing the Education Act. The school feeding program will also be getting some attention. You would have heard some time ago that there was a discussion about putting a ban on certain things in schools, but we have to dialogue, we continue to dialogue with the stakeholders to ensure that whatever is sold or fed to our children in schools is wholesome and healthy. And I am for that argument, that we should try to ensure that our children are not fed with what we call junk in schools, but we cannot impose it on people before we discuss it with them. And so the discussions are going on, and I hope that between the unions, the Principals Association, the Ministry of Education, and other stakeholders, the parents, that there will be some consensus about what should be done in that regard. Madam President, school security concerns will be addressed, and we have heard that the services of a former police commissioner has been retained for that purpose. The special education unit will be getting some assistance. There's going to be psychosocial support for students who face adverse circumstances. I'm really pleased to hear about the early childhood education development that is going to be taking place through the Pearl initiative. I think it's called the Program for Educational Advancement and Relevant Learning, and I'll leave some of that for my colleague to discuss. But it seems to be a very interesting intervention where you're going to make use of some of the spaces that we have in our primary schools to integrate some of our pre-K so that our children can get a good start. Madam President, I heard that there are some schools, I think Dennery, Infant, Montgouge, and Beaufort, will be getting the first phase, and then we move to Bocage and Soufrière. Madam President, this government continues to pay facilities fees for our students. We started with math and English, but we are going to continue to add subjects until we eventually relieve our families, our parents, from paying those fees. Madam President, CXC fees, we continue to pay. Sorry, the CXC fees I was referring to first. We continue to pay the subjects, but the facilities fees, as a former principal, I can tell you the headaches the parents had. Some of them, when it came to graduation time, that's when they come and say, "So, please allow my child to graduate because I couldn't afford." And sometimes, you just have to let it go. But now they don't have that burden. Madam President, more devices for our students in schools. Laptops. Not what they call them, learn books, e-books. I don't know what that is. Not that. Chromebooks. But proper Chromebooks. Thank you, Madam Parliamentary Secretary. Chromebooks and laptops. Devices that are relevant and useful to the students in this particular time.
Honorable Leader of Government Business, you have 15 minutes to
Very well, Madam President. I believe I will be well within that time. So, Madam President, we also will be doing some work on ICT in schools, increasing the bandwidth so that students are more able to use their devices. Post-secondary education will become a focus, or it has been, and tertiary education. What we're doing now is increasing access to tertiary and higher education. You would have heard the Minister for Education mention the first generation scholarship and all the exploits we've made with that particular initiative. And at this time, I want to congratulate the Vieux Fort Comprehensive Secondary School, Madam President. I know a certain senator here would be happy to hear that they have outperformed some of our colleagues at the MON and some of our original institutions at the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Exam, the CAPE exam. And I'm very proud to be, I didn't go to Vieux Fort Compre, but I went to a Compre. Yes. And they are the island chumps. So congratulations to Miss Ava Peter and her staff at the Vieux Fort Comprehensive Secondary School. I hope they heard me and for making us very proud. And Madam President, I think they have justified the need for an additional vice principal, because the complement of staff and students, over 1,000 teachers, over 1,000 students, over 100 teachers, is enough to guarantee to make a case for an additional VP. So our government has seen it fit, and so you will be hearing very soon of an additional vice principal being made available at that institution. I think our former Prime Minister, Dr. Anthony, would be very proud of that. He's a product of the Vieux Fort Comprehensive. And Senator Aziz, I understood, was a teacher. So he may have contributed to that. Thank you very much, Senator. Yes. Madam President, TVET education is going to continue to be strengthened, and I'm going to say that this is how you complement what you offer in schools to what the demands of the workforce and the demands of the business sector and the technical competencies that are needed. You want to make sure there is a balance. I understood, Madam President, and the Minister for Education did mention that there will be an association of retired educators to be formed. And I think that this is a very, very good move. Tapping into the experiences, the knowledge of our former educators to help provide mentoring and provide support to share the knowledge and experience with our present teachers. Sustainable development and the blue economy. Madam President, we're an island. We're surrounded completely by water. It's a great resource, but how are we using it? And so I'm happy to hear that we have embarked on the issuance of blue bonds, which is consistent with one of our sustainable development goals. I think is goal number 6. And the focus on reducing untreated water, improving the subsidizing fishing to improve sustainability in that sector. And in doing so, we improve our situation with climate change adaptation while we grow the economy. So, renewable resources, all of these, renewable concessions, all of these are initiatives that help to encourage people to turn to renewable forms of energy. Madam President, youth development and sports. I still consider myself a sportsman. 2 weekends ago, my team won a volleyball competition. Can you imagine that? I didn't play the final, but I played the first 2 rounds. When it got to the final, madam, it got a little too quick for me, so I let the younger boys do it. But I'm proud to be associated with sports. And I know somebody here is probably even more excited to talk about that than I am. But Madam President, when we hear announcements being made by our government about the improvement and the development of sports, we ought to be excited. And if I seem excited, that's why. Madam President, a semi-professional football league will be starting in this country. The last one we had was in Trinidad, W Connection and Joe Public and them. And we had St. Lucian footballers having to go over to try to get a place. This is the base that you're going to form for your athletes to move to the next level. So I look forward to that. The Athletics Association is doing a very good job by getting some of our athletes into elite programs. And I'm happy to mention, as we have been told, that our star athlete, in addition to getting the land, has been issued a diplomatic passport. And I'm speaking of Julian Alfred. You see, we're not treating sports as if it's low class. Sports is tops. Madam President, the refurbishing of sporting facilities are happening island-wide, and lighting. And we're not going to be using fake grass. Proper refurbishment. Madam President, there'll be an alternative sports desk to be introduced. And the minister told you all the various non-traditional sports that will be benefiting. The refurbishment works will be continued at the Mindo Philip Park. That's the first place. That's the first place I got to bowl to a regional batsman at the Mindo Philip Park. So it has memories, and we must not throw it away because we have Boseju. Madam President, in youth development, this year is the year of the youth. It has been determined. And Youth Month is not only about April. We need to have continuous youth activity throughout the year. And I remember my days at NYC. I hope we can bring all those back. It was really good to help understand conflict management, Youth Business Forum, Youth Policy and Action Plan, and the youth economy. The youth economy has a place in that regard, so that our young people can understand how they can use that medium to empower themselves and to reduce young unemployment. I also heard about jazz, youth jazz. Well, Madam President, jazz is for everybody. So youth jazz, look out for that. So like Lucia, jazz with. Madam President, allow me in the next few minutes to move to the area that I've been assigned alongside Dr. Hille, which is tourism. Madam President, this is the industry that has given the base for the recovery of our economy. And the growth in this industry has been commendable. Madam President, the message that drives the industry from our end is that we want to offer an authentic and inclusive experience to everyone. And that is why all of our policies are centered around inclusion. We want to be authentic. We want people to value our country, not just as a destination, but as a place where you can get a real, meaningful, authentic experience. And I am not surprised that in the last Caribbean adventure, the awards that were held in Jamaica, that we were voted the leading Caribbean destination for adventure. For the first time. It's not by accident, because our guests come and they talk about the experience. And once you can do that, they will return. So, Madam President, that is why we have the community tourism program that is, I mentioned that will be coming to pass the legislation later. This is really based on having the legislative framework to allow this to happen. And so we have to look at some of the objectives, which is to facilitate the development of the subsectors, expansion of the tourism niche markets and services, and making sure that that piece of legislation gives us the framework and the base for the implementation. Madam President, I want to mention just a few gains we've made. We've had 90 units, beach resorts in Cap Estate, 80 rooms, luxury hotel, Zoe Tree under construction, 250 room Dreams Resort under construction, 345 room Grand Hyatt Sabwisha, Choiseul. Yes, we'll continue. We have decided we have the supportive and inclusive concept, trying to ensure that the local tourism investors are getting equitable treatment in terms of incentives and benefits. Madam President, that is going to also help us with the ease of doing business. There's a key issue there, and that is to ensure that the benefits of tourism are enjoyed by all. So we have put aside $14 million to ensure that we create this facility which allows the population, especially the service providers on a smaller scale, to be able to benefit. So, Madam President, we are moving in that direction in tourism. And I want to also mention now that we are also recognizing our partners. And for those who may not know, we hosted the Jimmys on Friday last. It's the first time that we've hosted an award ceremony to recognize our partners, and it's named Jimmy's after our Mount Jimmy. And I must tell you that the private sector, the stakeholders were there, and we celebrated the achievements, businesses, vendors, individuals who acknowledged. And I look forward to it being bigger and better next year. Madam President, I want to move a little faster now, because I want to wrap up.
Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes.
5 minutes, thank you. Madam President, jazz is back.
Yes.
I can say loud and clear that jazz is back. Somebody said Soleil Couché, but jazz is back. And I want to tell St. Lucians that jazz is alive and well. And over the next few days, as of tomorrow, the opening, in Masha. On Sunday, well, Saturday, Babano. Sunday, Soufre and Deriso. Yes, yes. And of course, we have the national calendar that we have heard about. 6 different events. Madam President, the ticket sales for this year's jazz has been the very best ever. At this point, we have exceeded what we sold in 2016, which was then our best year. So, let me tell you, this is not happening because people just accidentally click on St. Lucia. This is because they know what they're getting is quality. And so, Madam President, I am proud to be part of a ministry where we can showcase our craft, our clothing, our theater, our arts, our food, and our music, and of course our hospitality. Through the creative industries, Madam President, there's greater public participation, and we're starting just after jazz. We're going into Carnival in July, Emancipation in August, the Lawas, then La Marguerite, and then Creole Heritage, and then Christmas comes. So for the rest of the year, we're rolling. And that all of these bring economic activity as well as inclusion and a sense of identity for our country. Madam President, the National Trust getting back its subvention through of course, is a partner of the Ministry of Culture. Investment is back as well, Madam President. Through the CIP, we have been able to now include a component of investment and infrastructure. And that is why I mentioned that some of the housing developments will be benefiting our people through the investment area. Machine-readable IDs will be issued to some of our CIP holders. There will also be the applicants who are denied access, because we have to increase our visibility and our due diligence. So anybody who is denied access from one country will not be eligible to apply for our CIP. So, Madam President, these are some of the initiatives. We are looking at some infrastructure and components for the CIP. We have 35 projects totaling $370 million to be approved under the Tourism Incentives Act. GPH is on stream, and I must say, so far we have not sold our port. We have not sold our port. We are in negotiation, and when that agreement is signed, we know that the port Castries and Port Soufre will be transformed. So, Madam President, we look forward to that. We will be coming back, as I mentioned, to pass the Tourism Development Bill in this House, and I look forward to that debate because I will have to be presenting it. I want to thank Dr. Hilaire, the Permanent Secretary, the DPS, and the staff of the Ministry of Tourism, our agencies, SLTA, Invest St. Lucia, GIS, CDF, FRC, Event St. Lucia, the SLHTA, the tourism and the other tourism service providers, and the consumers and other stakeholders who have contributed to our success at this point. Madam President, I intended to spend some time on national security and infrastructure, but I believe my colleagues here are more than capable of doing so, but I just want to make one quick statement on national security. I want to tell this Senate that we as a government have recognized the need for improving our national security, and so we have enacted legislation and we have included a number of programs: Swift Justice, increased allocation for legal services, the Sheriff's Office, Halls of Justice construction, the ascension to the CCJ, the converting George Charles into a rehabilitation center to mitigate against crime prevention at an early stage, the first traffic district court to remove the backlog of cases, a new drug squad building to be built, custody suites will be reconstructed, $4.2 million, the Northern Divisional Headquarters for the in Grozily, and working with the judiciary, we also have the Southern Divisional Headquarters, and working through the judiciary. Madam President, all of these initiatives, together with a team of stakeholders and a government that cares about our people will set the right environment for us to operate in a safe, caring, and prosperous economy. So, Madam President, I give support to this appropriation bill. I commend our Honorable Prime Minister for his strong, committed leadership, and I ask that this Senate gives its blessings to approve this appropriation bill 2023-2024. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the appropriation 2023-2024 bill be read a second time. Senator Joahir.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues senators. I'm happy to see that those of us who are here have made it out. Well, those of us who are here, we've made it our business to contribute to this debate. Madam President, this is not my first presentation on an appropriations bill. I was first appointed to the Senate in 2020, August of 2020, as an opposition senator. So I would have missed the budget then. I debated as an opposition senator on the budget in 2021. I also debated in 2022 in government. And this time around, Madam President, I'm debating again in 2023. I say this obviously because it's not my first rodeo. But Madam President, in my time following St. Lucian politics, in my time sitting in the gallery, whether it was on this side or on that side, in my time sitting in a chamber around these tables, opposition or government, I have never seen a budget so impactful. I have never seen a budget that is all-encompassing, and I will tell you why. Now, Leader of Government Business did speak to every aspect of what was presented by the Prime Minister. I thought he did a fantastic job in about an hour to present that. However, I will not speak on every aspect of the budget, but I really want to focus on three areas: education, crime and deviant behavior, and of course, tourism. And I'll tell you why, because I'd love to show you the linkages. Madam President, if you would recall, when we came into government in 2021, the first thing we had to focus on was getting our children back to school. This was the first thing, because as you would recall, we were hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The first thing that the Minister for Education, Honorable Sean Edward, and his team decided to do was to adopt a phased approach to get our children back into the classroom. A phased approach of a hybrid system where they could still operate virtually and in the classroom. But Madam President, in order for our students to still be able to operate in a virtual classroom, they needed the resources to do so. Because if you recall, the government that was in office, the administration, the UWP administration at the time, said, and it was their Minister for Education who said that there was no value in laptops. And I have to start off with this, Madam President, because as we know, the foundation of everything that we are set to do here today is education. It was our own Nobel laureate, Sir Arthur Lewis, who said that the cure for poverty is education. one of our own, advising us, advising people in the region, advising. They even named a building after him in the UK. The London School of Economics just named a whole block after Sir Arthur Lewis. The fundamental cure for poverty is education. And Madam President, this has always been a fundamental principle of an SLP. It has been the fundamental principle and premise on which the Labour Party was formed. So when we came into office in 2021, the first thing we had to do was focus on just that, education. And so immediately, our Minister for Education thought the best thing that we had to do was provide learning devices, laptops. I am not talking about e-books because Senator Dr. Prosper gave us an extensive description on those e-books. Madam President, when we came into office, there was a whole closet, a whole room of storage, of e-books in storage. They were not working. Millions, and they are still there. Millions wasted because somebody decided that it was better to have an e-book than a laptop. There's certain software that cannot function on the e-book. And so we had to buy licenses. We had to purchase licenses for those e-books, Madam President. A waste of government resources. So we gave the students of St. Lucia Form 1s, Form 3s, laptop devices so they can function in a virtual space. Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre did campaign on that in opposition. And I'm really thankful and happy that he had the foresight because he had no idea that COVID was going to hit us, Madam President. But immediately the resources were allocated for us to get our children back in school. Madam President, I did say that I want to bring the link to crime and violence and the safety measures that were mentioned in the budget because Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre did state that this budget will focus on two aspects, health and on security. As we know, the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. Madam President, although the leader of government business did allude to it earlier, I wanted to remind the people of St. Lucia why this is so important, why removing facilities is so important, why paying for CXC math and English is so important, Madam President. Because if you do not allocate the resources to develop our nation, to develop our future generation, we will fail as a country. We will certainly fail, Madam President. I am testament to policies of a St. Lucia Labour Party government, Madam President. When I passed for Castries Comprehensive in 1999-2000, now I know some of y'all want to try and calculate my age. It was 2000, I passed for Compre. You think my parents knew where they were going to get the money to send me to school? My father was a security officer working in Burger Plus, having to walk from Castries to Forestier because the bus system would not function in the night. Get home at 1-2 o'clock in the morning to try to put food on our table. My mother, a seamstress, sewing, making little alterations, a little alteration for $5, one for $10. How can these two persons, thankfully they were both in job opportunities, how could they have afforded to send me to school? Madam President, the then administration under the leadership of Honorable Dr. Kenny Anthony decided that the best thing we could do for our young people was implement the $500 bursary program, Madam President. That $500 bursary program, a policy of an SLP government, is what has contributed to me standing in the Senate today, Madam President. Without these resources, God alone knows where I could be. But Madam President, it is absolutely important for us to focus on these things. When I tell you children cannot even finish CXCs, they cannot do their CXCs, they cannot afford. I know of a particular member in the lower house who only was able to sit 2 CXCs because he could not afford. And he had to work as a messenger boy, work packing shelves, eventually went back to school and got his CXCs. Today he's in the lower house. He's the Minister of Youth Development and Sports, Madam President. And what has sustained him is scholarships, is policies of an SLP administration. And we are reaping the benefits today, Madam President. We see the continuation of these scholarships, Madam President. And so I also want to take this opportunity to say a special thank you to the Taiwanese government who has been with this SLP administration, holding our hands, supporting us, providing scholarships. 20 more persons are going to Taiwan. Thank you to the Cuban government. 10 more individuals are going to Cuba, Madam President. Remember how they stopped that scholarship program? Remember how they stopped it? And of course, thank you to the Monroe College, because now we have 50 scholarships. 50 scholarships going towards the children of St. Lucia. Develop your own. I mean, we have produced 2 Nobel laureates. When we study abroad, they talk so highly about St. Lucians, how we portray ourselves. We have something to be proud of. And that means we simply have to focus on the base, on the foundation, which is education. Madam President, I attended a lecture, May Day lecture, held by the Sir George F.L. Charles Foundation a few nights ago. And the presenter was Dr. Henry Charles. And I listened to him speak and said how we facilitate our development is through empowerment. How we facilitate development is through empowerment. People empowerment, Madam President. And we are seeing what has transpired in Vieux-Fort. We are seeing that Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre has heard the cries of the people of Vieux-Fort. Some persons are in high-risk areas, Madam President. They have absolutely nowhere to turn to. But this SLP administration has engaged in a program to allow for the resettlement of some of these Vieux-Fort residents, Madam President, through the PROUD program, empowerment. And speaking of the PROUD program, I have been informed that the Attorney General has received instructions to convert the PROUD program to a statutory corporation, Madam President. Do you know what that means? That means that my grandfather, your Pawek have easier access and quicker access to getting their deeds, to getting their land documents, to getting what is rightfully theirs, owning a piece of St. Lucia that we can give to our people, Madam President. Not 1,000 acres in the same Vieux-Fort for how much? 99 cents, $1 a square foot. $1 a square foot. 1,000 acres of the people's land. The modus operandi of a UWP administration. So quickly, they wanted to sell even our beaches, Madam President. And if the people of St. Lucia did not stand up and say that enough was enough and protested the restriction of access to the beach, where would we have been? What would have happened to Miss Marjorie in Casabah? Today, Miss Marjorie is proudly standing and telling you that this is a government that truly cares about the people, respecting what it is that is our culture, respecting what it is that belongs to us, and preserving our patrimony, Madam President. Madam President, in addition to the facilities fees that were paid for 24,000 primary and secondary school students, we see that the government is still distributing laptops. We still see that the government is still providing incentives to boost and bolster the education and the livelihoods of our people. We still see that 5,000 households are benefiting from an ICT program of paying only $20 for internet, Madam President. These children who were forced into a COVID-19 world, forced into a virtual world, a lot of them did not even have internet access at their home. And so our government has come in and laid the foundation and has heard their cries and has implemented that, Madam President. 5,000 households will now have access to internet at a reduced cost of $20. Isn't that something that we can all be proud of? Madam President, this is just for the children. Now we go a little higher and we talk about the youth. Madam President, did you know that in less than 3 weeks of the youth economy being launched, that the Youth Economy Agency was opened? Prime Minister Honorable Philip J. Pierre campaigned on a promise of a youth economy. This was the flagship promise of the SLP. Why? Because he believes that yes, majority of our population is youth. But if we do not take care of them, Madam President, we will not have a future as a country. And so we see the launch of the Youth Economy Agency. We see 10 million being allocated to an MSME grant facility where you have 70% in grant and 30% in loan. Where you ever heard that? Oba jamais ten ça. Leo tela yo pa take jamais fait, Madam President, 70 to 30. But let me break it down so people of St. Lucia can have a clearer understanding of what that means. With that 70 to 30 loan facility, 70% grant and 30% loan, what it means is that if you decide as a young business owner, and the allocation is $25,000 per business opportunity, if you decide that you want to take a loan for a 3-year period, your return or your payment will be about $200 and something. If you decide that you want to extend that loan to a 5-year period, your loan will be $100 and something, Madam President. Madam President, you would go to a bank now and apply for a loan, and the minimum interest rate they will give you as a business owner is 7%. The minimum they will give you is 7%. And when you calculate that over the periods that I just explained, you would pay about $771. Compared to a 70-30 facility where you pay about $100 and something. Madam President, this is the cost of my flow bill. $100 and something. Never in my lifetime would I ever think that I can walk into the Ministry of Commerce, apply for a loan for $25,000 and pay only $100 and something a month. Now tell me if that is not of a government that truly cares about the people, Madam President. We talk on youth, we are still on youth. And our leader of government business spoke about the semi-professionalization of football. People would say, oh, it's cricket we always playing in St. Lucia, or it's track and field. But Madam President, do you know that one of the first sporting areas that was reopened post-COVID-19 or during COVID-19 was in football, because it was one of the most organized? Do you know that there were still competitions? And I want to take this opportunity to really shout out a few persons who have played their part in keeping our young men off the streets, who have played their part in keeping our young men together. I want to make special mention of David Shakes Christopher, the producer of Blackheart Productions. Madam President, the biggest, baddest, bestest football activity, football fete, it's always a lime. David Shakes Christopher has been doing this for over 18 years. And I want us to give him a special round of applause, Madam President. I also want to highlight Mr. Alvin Malikan of Veteran Sports Inc., Madam President. Mr. Malikan takes his time and he gets the young, he gets the veterans, he gets people occupied. Why do I speak of that? Because the pandemic that we are now facing is a pandemic of deviant behavior. It's a pandemic where we do not address the root causes of a lot of our issues. And so we see our men, our young men, engaging in violent crimes. Madam President, if it's not for those people, we will see a lot of people going wayward. We see the semi-professionalization of football because there are opportunities in sports. There is discipline in sports. There is motivation. There is camaraderie. There is socialization. It's an opportunity for you to go on a field, to burst a sweat, for you to just come out from work and just lay it all out when you're on the court or when you're on the field. And so now young men will be able to get paid for them to participate in football. Maybe one day we will see one of them playing for Arsenal or Man United or Chelsea. But Madam President, in the meantime, we need to ensure that we continue to support our young men. We're still on youth. As we speak of youth, Madam President, we would learn that the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports recently launched an app called Skill 758. People always think that you are just doing these things and there is no thinking, there is no thought process behind these things. The Skills 758 app, Madam President, will allow for anybody, any young person to go, sign in, put in their profile, and put it out there. It will allow for any employer to go on this app and search for what it is that they want. So, Madam President, take for example, I live in the Castries area. If I have a leak in my pipe, I don't have to wait for 2-3 hours for me to get a plumber from Dennery, because I can geolocate a plumber right in my community. And that is what Skill 758 is all about, creating another opportunity for our young people to find gainful employment. And we're still speaking of young people, and this one had to touch me, because Julian Alfred, God knows what that young lady had to endure, especially under the previous administration. Absolutely no support. You know what they wanted to do? They wanted to investigate the previous minister for allocating $150 a month to Julian Alfred from a supposed minister's account. Up to now, we cannot even see on the books what this minister's account is. $150 to a young athlete. We are investigating, providing support to our people. But do you know, Madam President, that Julian Alfred is on the way to making St. Lucia even more proud? Soon we will see Julian at the Olympics. And kudos to the government of St. Lucia for providing Julian Alfred with a diplomatic passport, Madam President. She deserves it. We need to show value to our young people. No more long lines, no more waiting. Julian Alfred will get the respect that she deserves. And the leader of government business also explained to us and shared with us that Julian Alfred will also be getting a piece of land. Her own, Madam President. She can build a house, she can establish herself, because she came from a community and she came from an upbringing where she did not have the resources. And I want to say special thanks to our Prime Minister, special thanks to the Member of Parliament for Castries South, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, special thanks to the Minister for Youth Development and Sports, Honorable Kenson Casimir, and the former Minister for Education, Honorable Sean Edward, for ensuring that Julian Alfred gets the recognition that she deserves. Madam President, I spoke a bit about children in school. I spoke a bit about our young people. And I just wanted to highlight a few things that some might think these things are not very important. But especially with the trajectory that we are on, I can see why the Prime Minister had to allocate so much money to our safety and our security, Madam President, because we are in that pandemic. We are living in a world that we have never seen before. I remember growing up in Forestier, you could leave your door wide open. You could forget money on your table, and your neighbor will come back and tell you, hey, you forget to close the door. Nobody would enter your house, Madam President. This is not to say that any one person is responsible for crime, that any one person is responsible for deviant behavior, but it is all of our responsibility to put necessary measures in place to tackle it, Madam President. And so if you think that causing repairs or repairing a police station is irrelevant, then you have a serious problem, Madam President. Because as you know, if you do not make the facilities comfortable for our policemen and women, how will they function? How will they get to do their jobs? And so in this budget, we are seeing an allocation for the repairs of various police stations across St. Lucia. We are seeing, and we are not just saying it because it is happening. Work is already happening on the Grosile Divisional Police Headquarters, Madam President. Grosile is a constituency that has registered voters of about 30,000. Registered voters, not persons who are living there, registered voters. You know who else has 30,000 voters? The entire country of St. Kitts. The entire country of St. Kitts has a population of about 30,000 people. Grosile has just a registered voters list of 30,000. Why do I say that, Madam President? Because they need a facility to be able to manage such a large area. They need it, Madam President. It's not just about, and we have tourism, the influx of tourism activity in the north. And Senator Nurani Aziz, who is here, who happens to be the president, well, the CEO of the St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Authority, I am sure he's inundated with requests about safety and security in the north of the island, Madam President. Do you know that Grosile spans from all the way Cap Estate to all the way down by Dame Paulette? That there is Degazor, there is Monet, there is Monsepa. You know, there is Deramo. I had a leader of opposition talking about Vesikwe. I don't even know if he knows where Vesikwe is. But there are so many outer roads, Madam President. And the police officers, with the limited resources that they have, they need to get to these people. So when we came into government and we allocated about 20-something vehicles to the police, it is because we want to help them carry out their duties. It's because we need to show them the respect, Madam President, to be able to function. We see the establishment of a sheriff's office. We see the establishment of a coroner's court. We see that the 1st District Traffic Court will be established. There will be a new drug squad building that will be commissioned very soon. And Madam President, the bandwidth at the Bordelais Correctional Facility will be increased. Now, I got a few people calling me, telling me, oh, why y'all want to give the prisoners internet access? It don't have nothing to do with giving the prisoners internet access. Because as we know, there is a backlog of cases, Madam President. But the Swift Justice Project and the money that has been allocated to the Swift Justice Project will allow for the expansion of the bandwidth at Bordelais. So more than one virtual court cases can be heard, Madam President. We know of people who have been on remand for 5-8 years. What is going on with that? We have a backlog in our system. And so we see an additional 1 million has been allocated to that, Madam President. We see the expansion of a witness protection program. Many persons are afraid to come forward. But the witness protection program will be so key, where you see something, you say something, you give an anonymous tip. There will be somebody you can finally come to and share that information. And Madam President, it is interesting to note, and I want to applaud the efforts of the RSLPF, that almost every day I am hearing that they have made an arrest, Madam President. Recently, I heard about a murder in Vieux-Fort of a 60-something-year-old man a few weeks ago. And just yesterday, it was announced that somebody was charged, Madam President. Kudos to the RSLPF. They are working hard, and so we need to respect them, Madam President. We see that the repairs in the Vieux-Fort police station are also underway, and the Prime Minister did speak of that. Madam President, all of what we are doing is to put in place measures to strengthen our ability to tackle crime and violence, and to allow for our young men to not follow that sort of deviant behavior patterns. Madam President, speaking of crime and violence, many people will say, oh, it's the government problem. The Prime Minister needs to take a stronger hand. The Prime Minister needs to do this. The Prime Minister needs to do that. Or though the Prime Minister is not specialized in the area, it is his responsibility to provide the resources to tackle it, Madam President. But do you know who else's responsibility it is? It is yours, Madam President, and it is mine. And the church does not need permission from anybody to hold an open air and say enough is enough. Rice St. Lucia did not need permission, but yet still they are on the ground day and night, Madam President, doing what it is that they need to do. And shout out to Senator Noorani Aziz, he's part of it. Shout out to Dr. Stephen King, he's part of it. Dr. Venus Cherry Betty. These people are establishing safe spaces, are working with our young people day and night, non-stop. And with all the foundations that we have in St. Lucia, we should not expect just one foundation to come out and tackle these issues, Madam President. It is all of our responsibility, Madam President. Madam President, I know that my time is limited, and I did not want to speak too extensively on every part of the debate, but I really wanted to make somewhat of a connection. Establishing the foundation of providing educational resources so we keep our young people occupied. Establishing and putting measures in place that when certain things happen, we can either nip it in the bud, tackle it, or prevent it altogether. But Madam President, when these young men are arrested and they are held in Bordelais, and I know there was some Permandu project, 13 million to implement programs and policies, and there's a lot about that project that we will hear soon, because there's a lot about it that we do not know. Madam President, what happens to them when they are inside of this correctional facility? What happens to them when they are in that holding cell? And what happens to them that when they are released, or a judge has said that they are innocent, or they have spent their time and they have to go back to their homes. I see you shaking your head, Mr. Aziz, because I know you know. What happens to them, Madam President? If we do not put certain measures in place, the cycle will continue. They will come back, they will go on the block, and they will not have a skill, they will not have anything to their name, no family to go back to, and they will want to survive. When they decide to explore deviant options, we see they find themselves right back in Bodiley, because somehow Bodiley seems to be a facility for that. It's a safe space. But Madam President, when you tell me that a government has established the construction of 345 rooms in Sabwisha Chozel, don't you think, Madam President, that the construction of that hotel will provide job opportunities for these young men? When you tell me that 250 rooms for another luxury hotel, Zoetry Resorts and Spa, 80 rooms in Marigot, Courtyard Marriott over in Point Seraphine, 9 stories, 140 rooms, and a 90-room Casaba facility, well, a hotel in Casaba. We are creating jobs, Madam President. We are creating opportunities for our young people. The development that perhaps will happen very soon with the port development, GPH, this is jobs. The development in Banans, this is jobs. The development in Sufra, this is jobs, Madam President. And so the Prime Minister has said that in order for us to keep our young people off the streets, the best thing we need to do is to keep them occupied. Whether we are putting lights on 13 facilities over across St. Lucia. And speaking of facilities, I listened to a platform meeting the other night, Madam President, and I have to tell you, I have to sometimes wonder what it is that our people cannot see when you have the facts in front of them. And when certain people come, and they come and speak to you with emotion, and they come and cry to you, and they run on stations, and they bring a whole pile of groceries on the table, Madam President, we drink it so quickly, flashing mirrors. Because a former Minister of Sports, who happens to be a former Member of Parliament for Dennery South, actually stood on a platform and said that having stands or seating stands in an area in Dennery was not necessary. He said it was not necessary. A former Minister of Sports. And it only begs the question that maybe they did not have the interests of our young people at heart. Because they said that it was not about moving people out of the stadium. The stadium provided a facility for young people to go train, to become the best of the best, world-class athletes. We have the Jimmys in tourism. We need the Jimmys in sports, Madam President. We need the Jimmys in sports, the best of the best, the highest peak. But that cabinet was a cabinet filled with the most sports personalities. We had one who was a permanent secretary. We had one who was the president of the Olympic Committee. We had one who had football clubs and cricket clubs in Grozile. We had one that claimed he was a basketball coach. He was a... Yes, record for 400 meters. You would think that they would have some sort of empathy. You would think that they would have some sort of understanding that we need to prioritize and speak on behalf of our young people, Madam President. And so, Madam President, very soon, I hope, we will see and hear more about the stadium. And the Prime Minister did tell us that as of November, well, we saw that as of November 2022, work had already commenced on the St. Jude Hospital, Madam President. I will not go too much into St. Jude Hospital. I will leave that for my very learned colleague who served as a PS in the Ministry of Infrastructure, because, Madam President, we have to do justice to that. When the Prime Minister can stand here and say that we have to allocate 35 million of the people's money to pay in debts for a box, Madam President, it will get you upset, Madam President. Can you tell me what 35 million can do for our people? So much. If we have 35 million, we'd have a HRDC in Forestry, we'd have a HRDC in Granville, we'll have sporting facilities, we will have libraries for our children to function. We would have millions of massy bags to give away. We would. 35 million is allocated to pay off a debt for something that is not even complete, Madam President. An empty box. It looking so nice on the outside. If you go close to the wall, you see it have the little glitter, it has some little sparkles on it. But when you go inside of that, Madam President, it's gray alone you seeing. It is only gray, and the roof leaking, the roof that not even complete. And you tell me we spent over $300 and something million on that? Wasn't that wastage when we had a facility that was about 80% complete, Madam President? I see all the jobs. I see all the hotel rooms. I cannot tell you the same about the previous administration because they were not able to deliver not one hotel room, Madam President. I see these opportunities for our young people. I see the opportunities for the elderly, the 80 program. I see the interventions towards us gaining universal health care, Madam President. Every citizen will have their health card. We start with the mothers, we start with the children, maternal support, Madam President. I see that there is something in the budget for everybody. I am from a community where almost everybody is a contractor, legitimately. Forest checking plea contractor. Let me tell you, everybody, every corner, there's a backhoe there, the backhoe on the road, the backhoe by my home. We have the support in that community. So when you tell me that Prime Minister Philip JPA has removed the VAT, 12.5% VAT on building materials, can you tell me that the people of St. Lucia will not be happy about that, Madam President? 12.5% removed. Do you know that when the SLP came into office, we had a housing repair program? But Madam President, with all the struggles that we were going through, inflation, the increase in materials, the supply chain challenges, people could not really make those adjustments and build their homes. But this, Madam President, comes at a much needed time. Madam President, I know I've exhausted all my time. I see you nodding my head. I really just want to thank you for that opportunity to be able to speak on certain aspects of the budget. And I, of course, yield to the rest of my colleagues who I believe will do justice to the remaining parts. Thank you.
Senator Shalry.
Thank you, Madam President. I bid good morning to my colleagues and St. Lucians, wherever you are, who have tuned in this morning and taken time off to listen to our contribution to the budget address before us. Madam President, forgive me a bit. My voice is not at its best today, but I find it necessary that I lend my voice and support to the debate. Before I deal with the substantive matter, Madam President, I beg your leave to do the following. I'd like to first extend well wishes to the students who are today all over St. Lucia writing the CPA exam. I also extend well wishes. I know the teachers are sitting and the principals are sitting at the edge of their seats and the parents are nervous. I know we have some of my colleagues inside of here who, though they don't still grace the classrooms, but by the fact that once a teacher, always a teacher, they too are very nervous. And so I do bid our students all the best, and I know that they will do well despite the challenges that they've had to face getting up to this point. I also want to extend my condolences, Madam President, to the family of Gavin Evans, better known as Yellow from Viewfort, who met his untimely demise a few weeks ago in a unfortunate, what started out as a normal fishing venture for him, and he did not make it back to shore with the breath of life. I also want to acknowledge his companion on that fishing vessel, Mr. Kadesh Thomas, who we must admit, Madam President, he did such a brave act to ensure that he did not just take himself back to shore safely, but he ensured that the body of his deceased colleague was also able to come on shore to allow the family and the colleagues of Yellow to at least have that sort of closure. And I want to hail Mr. Thomas. I know him personally, Madam President, and I just want to recognize his bravery in that regard. Madam President, I also want to recognize 4 students from the Vijay Primary School. That's the primary school in my community, and I'm so proud of the school, Madam President, the past principals, the current principals, the past and present teachers and students. And you may not understand how valuable and how important this school is to me, Madam President. As a child growing up at Vijay, I walked to the near community of Deriso on a daily basis, myself and many other students, to get to school. And we did that despite the rain, despite the thunder. We did that for many years without a bridge to cross the river that separates us from Mikud South. Other students traveled to Piero Combine and Bellevue Combine previously. And so having a school in the community that my younger siblings, my son, my daughter, have been able to attend. My daughter is currently attending, and the school doing well. So I want to recognize Grace Antoine, and these are students who took part in the recently held District 6 sports, and they performed very well. So I want to recognize Grace Antoine, who received a bronze medal in the cricket ball throw, Tyrese James, gold in the cricket ball throw, KD James, silver in the 1,000-meter dash, and Naja Shalry, bronze in the 60-meter dash. I want also very quickly, Madam President, to extend sincere condolences to one of my staff at the Goodwill Fishermen's Cooperative, Ms. Dahlia Gentius, whose son passed away just a few days ago, Mr. Dilas Jabatis, a very well-known and well-loved young man of the community of Viewfort. So I just want to extend condolences to him, to his family, especially his mom, who is one of my staff members. I want to also join the leader of government business, Madam President, in extending congratulations to the Viewfort Comprehensive Secondary School. And I am not standing here today only as a past student of the Viewfort Comprehensive Secondary School, but because the community of Viewfort has been over the last few weeks, Madam President, plagued with a lot of negative news coming out of the community. It is always good to highlight when something positive comes out, and we tend to lend a lot of energy, a lot of voice to the negative things, and so sometimes the positive things get drowned in all of that. And so I want to congratulate the Viewfort Comprehensive Secondary School in continuing to be an educational institution par excellence, Madam President. And so I move to the matter before us, Madam President. Madam President, I rise in support of the pronouncements of the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre. And note, Madam President, that I said the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre. On the 25th of April 2023, in his budget address for the period 2023-2024. As I've always done, Madam President, before I graced the doors of this honorable house, I sat as a young student, as a young child, and debates in the house, especially budget debates, was always something that was enticing to me, something that I always drew near to, Madam President. And so I ask the same questions when I listen to a budget address that I'd always asked over the years. What is in it for me? How do I benefit? What is in it for the people, specifically the poor, the marginalized, single parents, low and middle income earners, unemployed, etc. And these are really the things or the questions that determine how good or how bad a budget is, Madam President. I sat amongst the audience on April 25th, and I was satisfied, Madam President, that the policies of this government, the policies of this Minister of Finance, was punctuated with initiatives for the people and poised to take us through and allow us to continue on a trajectory of growth and development. Moi vle di ça par toi madame président. Les moi écouter un budget. Les moi entendre premier ministre présenter un budget madame président. C'est question moi ka demander comment c'est qui ça qui en dedans bah gens qui pauvres, gens qui pas ka faire de l'argent, gens qui pas ka travail, maman et mes papa qui ka lever ici par koyo. Qui ça qui en budget à ba yo. Et que les moi acide en dit dans caille parlement ça là madame président li 25 avril et moi écouter honorable Philippe J. Pierre délivrer address budget là moi satisfait qui bagay là qui en dedans là c'est bagay qui kay point nous sorti côté nous y comme pays et comme peuple et point nous comme l'année après l'année ça là dans côté nous ça dit nous ja développé et nous ja fait plimer. This government, Madam President, campaigned on a mantra of putting people first, and so it has that legacy to uphold. Otherwise, they would have either lied to the electorate or they would have been deemed unable to deliver. Now we must admit, Madam President, that the St. Lucian electorate has had enough of both of the above. And I just want to jog our memory a bit, Madam President, not to deliberate too much on the matter. But in the campaign of 2016, the then leader of opposition, who through no coincidence at all is still the leader of the opposition, promised us the reduction and eventual elimination of VAT. And all we got was a 2.5% reduction. But, Madam President, an added $1.50 to fuel. Let's never forget that. Madam President, we were promised bananas to France. Juste toujours. In July 2020, Madam President, a Star newspaper had a story, and it read, Guy Joseph and Miguel Fevrier dash outside Parliament. You're not the media, you're an ex-convict in my eyes. These were the types of things we were subjected to under previous administration, Madam President. But after having said that, Call Couteau de l'Homme, Madam President, they then, in the grandeur of flashing mirrors, then brings down just a few days ago to address the convention a young man who I dare say can carry these same titles that a young St. Lucian man was looked down upon for, Madam President. And so, coming out of all of this, it is a breath of fresh air when we listen to a delivery by the Honorable Philippe J. Pierre that has promise, that has potential, and that is about the people of St. Lucia.
That's right.
Madam President, what was dished out to us is certainly something that we are relieved to be rid of. But the detractors will not go away overnight, Madam President. Let's not fool ourselves. And so the focus after the budget presentation has been stuck on creating mischief and spreading untruths because they want to drown the reality of what has been placed before us to take this country to the next level and crying on demand. There has been an unhealthy obsession, Madam President, in the quest to drown all of these things. And Madam President Aveti, it was very difficult for me to sit down and to put a presentation together today because must have kote pou ete, must have ki less pou pwe, must have ki less pou fe priority because so many things, so many projects, so many initiatives, Madam President, that mwen tiriri, must have ki less pou chebe, ki less because la ni telman bagay, Madam President, pou jan set lisi. Madam President, there has been an unhealthy obsession on the pronouncement of the Prime Minister about the 2.5% levy that will be going towards healthcare and security. Madam President, tell me, how could anybody who cares about the people of this country, how could anybody who cares about the health and security of this country say in one breath that crime and criminal activity and violent behavior is on the rise, but want to now spread all sorts of rumors, all sorts of mischief about a 2.5% levy that will go towards helping alleviate these very problems for the citizens of this country, Madam President? Tell me. Madam President, the tactics have been deliberate, and like I said, we know that they will not go away. And Madam President, I remember sitting in that chair on April 25th. And I know it was deliberate on the part of the Prime Minister when he said and he reiterated that the 2.5% levy will not be on food items. It will not be on medicinal items. It will not be on certain building material. It will not be on medical equipment, Madam President. That was said explicitly. Et Madam President, moi vle di sa en patois pour assis tout moun ka kompon sa na dia. Premier ministre la fait un prononcement. La kay ni 2.5% levy enlève certaines commodités pour aider healthcare et puis sécurité. Mais Premier ministre là dit et qui répète, il pas qu'à aller manger, il pas qu'à aller bagay we made et bagay comme ça, Madame Président. Mais où est moun vini dans kaila et puis bag manger, inizé, sick, ini di oui, ini bagay et yo ka fait quoi accordi Premier ministre là dit il ka mettre 2.5 levy en ligne. Madame Président, moi vle dit cette ici. Premier ministre là jadi 2.5% levy a pas kay affecté manger. Il pas kay affecté d'ailleurs parti mamay. Il pas kay affecté bagay ou bouize pour santé ou. Il pas kay affecté certains bagay ou kay bouize pour faire caillou. Il já dit ça, il pas kay affecté we med. Madam President, and I applaud this initiative, Madam President. Madam President, all over the world, medical expenses like the Medicaid and the Medicare and all these other things, we have relatives in the United States. We know that a lot of these medical facilities, medical programs, they are funded through taxation, either through general federal taxes or mandatory payroll taxes, Madam President. We know that. And so we should not as a nation be afraid to put our monies towards programs like that will especially be useful to the persons who really cannot afford medical insurance and to be able to pay their medical expenses up front. Madam President, we have to look out for our people who cannot look out for themselves. And so what I expect, Madam President, coming out of a levy system that will go towards, for example, medical care, I expect that it's going to be a robust system. The healthcare system will become more reliable with basic testing equipment, quicker response time, the ability to get world-class care in our own country, and so on, Madam President. And these are the things that I want to see going forward within our medical sector, Madam President. And Madam President, I dare say that perhaps if that $7 million that went to purchase vaccines that never up to a day like today saw our shores, Madam President, what would we have been able to do as a country for healthcare with $7 million? But we were not the ones who gave $7 million away, Madam President. In fact, we are the ones trying to figure out how we get the balance back, Madam President. Nous vle so nous sa fini Saint Jude. Nous vle so nous sa mette équipement Saint Jude pour assis gens sous le pays a joindre bon service Saint Jude, Madam President. Peut-être nous pas de ni pour mettre en levy 2.5% en laisse lycéen. Si $7 million ça la télé nous te ça servi pour faire bagaille, Madam President. And so we have to resort to these measures, Madam President. But it is really a strategy of one has to look out for the other in terms of affordability, Madam President. Madam President, I move quickly. I know I don't have a lot of time and I'm trying to remain within that time and also to protect my voice. I move quickly to the fishing sector, Madam President. Madam President, the Economic and Social Review of 2022 speaks to an improvement in the main areas of the fishing sector, Madam President. It speaks to a 4.3% increase in wild marine capture and an upward trend in fishing effort. And so, Madam President, I take this opportunity to applaud the men and women of the fishing sector in St. Lucia who sometimes feel that they are forgotten and neglected by the government, by successive governments, Madam President, but who continue to toil their trade despite the hindrances, despite the fact that there are so many challenges. They continue to ply their trade, Madam President, and continue to ensure that we have wholesome, fresh fish in this country. Proteins, Madam President, good fresh proteins, Madam President. So I applaud the fishing sector. And Madam President, I want especially to recognize here that this is not something that is just personal to me in terms of understanding the contribution that the fishing sector made. Because the Honorable Prime Minister, in his budget address, just as was promised on the campaign, Madam President, with regards to the $1.50 tax imposed on fuel, has now given the fishing sector, the fishermen and women of St. Lucia, the assurance that they will be receiving a $1 rebate, Madam President, a $1 rebate. And Madam President, a few weeks ago, as you know, that I manage a fishing cooperative, and the cooperatives really form a very valuable, is a very valuable partner within the sector. And so we are responsible for a lot of communication between central government and the fishing sector and so on. And so in a forum, a fisher who I cannot liberty say is aligned to the United Workers' Party, one morning just dropped a bomb in the chat about the $1.50, and he was on my back and on the attack that your government, your prime minister promised that he would move the $1.50. Kote, you still got pay $1.50. And I said to him, it will come, because I know, Madam President, that when the Honorable Philip J. Pierre makes a promise, it is a promise that he has already sat down and thought about thoroughly, and it will be delivered, Madam President. Exo mwen vle di se peche a ki pokote tan gouvernement sa la, on e wap Philippe J. Pierre, premier ministre pays sa la, jadi, i kay bay tout peche ki ka gen gas, $1 viye, paske premier administrasyon te mette $1 ek 50 cents tax an le gas la. Ek se peche a te ka fe la ide, yo pa ni chime an le lanme, yo pa supposé paye tax la, mais yo kay jwen $1 viye. And so I want specifically to throw that out there for that particular fisherman and the others that they had been able to co-op and bring along with them to deem that this government is so wicked and so callous that they've continued to pay the $1.50. The same fishers who said absolutely nothing, Madam President, when the $1.50 was imposed, but it's coming, a $1 rebate back for them. Madam President, and so I know that the Prime Minister also indicated that the mechanism for the rebate has not been finalized, and we're looking forward to the discussions with the relevant authorities, the Department of Fisheries, the Ministry of Finance, to determine what is the best way to do that. The cooperative sector has vouched their support in whatever way we can to ensure that it gets to the fishers, Madam President. And perhaps now is also a time for me to make a plea for fishers to now join the cooperative movement, join the cooperatives within their communities. Because, Madam President, if I go back a little and remember when the previous administration made the one-time $500 contribution during COVID, the cooperatives were the one who became the paymasters of that $500, and some of us did not even have the structures to facilitate that amount of monies, disbursement of that amount of money, but we quickly had to put things in place, and we facilitated fishers who were both members of our cooperative and non-members, and it did come to some of us at an additional administrative cost. And so I can see the additional resources that we may have to pull out to help in ensuring that the information would be collated for that rebate. And so it means it makes it easier for persons who are already members of the cooperative, and so perhaps it's a time to encourage persons to join the fishing cooperatives. Madam President, additional expansion in other aspects of the agricultural sector, and the Prime Minister spoke to enhancement of the CMOS subsector, and I, as a stakeholder within that subsector, Madam President, I'm really looking forward to the enactment of standard operating procedures for the CMOS subsector, Madam President. We always hear of the figures and how much contribution the CMOS makes to GDP and how many families benefit from the production of CMOS. But when you drive along the coastal areas of St. Lucia, Madam President, it is really hurtful, it is really an eyesore to see the way CMOS is dried, sometimes on the ground, sometimes on tables without covering. And I know just about 3 weeks or so ago, Invest St. Lucia, in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture, distributed some drying tables to the CMOS farmers of Opicor, Piero, Savans Bay, that general area. And so that is definitely a move in the right direction. But there is need to put legislation and operating procedures in place to ensure that we do not lose this valuable subsector, Madam President. And so I look forward to that being one of the things that is done within this fiscal year to ensure that we continue to expand the agricultural sector. Madam President, we heard of repairs and maintenance of fishing facilities, specifically castries, Dennery, and Viewfort in this budget. And these are much needed. These are much needed maintenance that needs to happen within the sector, Madam President, because a lot of the fishing facilities have really been left to deteriorate, and so I think that will really add some value to the sector. There was news of the desedimentation of the Choiseul Bay. We know the issues the Choiseul fishermen have been having over the years with the over-sedimentation within the port, and I look forward to, on behalf of the Choiseul fishers, the desedimentation of the bay. Madam President, as we speak, Dennery, Soufrière, and ancillary canneries are moving into a solarization system for their operations, Madam President, which will in fact reduce on their overheads and so being able to maneuver better within the sector. And I applaud the government for these initiatives and the support, especially in this case the Ministry of Commerce and Cooperatives through the Minister Emma Hippolyte, who has really been pushing to ensure that the cooperatives operate at a more efficient manner. Madam President, quickly I want to touch on the tax amnesty and refund, and to recognize that the pronouncement was made by the Prime Minister that some 3,703 taxpayers received refunds within the period 2022. And we know that this is in the value of about $8.9 million. And Madam President, we know that tax refunds is something that has always been talked about in terms of how slowly refunds come. Sometimes for years they will not yet assess. For years you cannot get your refunds and the government is owing you so much money and so on. So it's good news anytime you hear that at least some of them have received their refunds. I see people whispering that they've not gotten theirs, Madam President, but at least it means some St. Lucian in some quarter has received theirs, and that's applaudable. But I look forward to, Madam President, a real energized and reformed tax system, Madam President, especially with regards to filings and returns and refunds, Madam President, that it can be that there will be some level of greater fiscal space where that can be done more quicker in a quicker space of time. And Madam President, perhaps one of the things I would like to suggest is some sort of cross-government transfer, because Madam President, it has always amazed me how the government, you do your filing at Inland Revenue, you've been owed a refund of say a couple $100, but then at the same time you have to renew your driver's license or pay your vehicle tax, but you have to now find money to go into the transport division to pay the money, but the government is owing you, and sometimes it puts an additional strain on your limited resources. And so I look forward to the coming years, Madam President, where there will be a system where if one government agency is owing you by say a means of a refund, and then you have to pay for another service within the government system, that there can be some sort of cross transfer to facilitate that. Madam President, in terms of the tax amnesty, I applaud the extension of the tax amnesty, but I must say, Madam President, that I think it is time we look at our collection strategies with the view to improve and revise them. Visit the IRS strategies, perhaps, Madam President. How does the IRS find you where you are when you're owing a few $100s? But in St. Lucia, for years we have persons, businesses, who have collected VAT, for example. The VAT you've collected is not part of your operating cost. It is VAT that you've added 12.5% or 15% to the goods on your shelf. You've collected it on behalf of the government in order to remit it, and it's seated somewhere in your coffers for years, Madam President, and then we're giving you an amnesty and we're giving you a break on the fees and so on that are going to be charged. I think that we really need to review the system to make it more robust, to make the collection strategies, improve the collection strategies, so that we're not constantly going through that cycle of amnesties and $24 million that you can keep and so on, Madam President. We really need to look at it. We need to look at the manpower at some of our collection points and determine whether they need to be augmented, whether they need to be increased, whatever needs to be done to ensure that persons are serious about remitting funds that they've collected on behalf of the government. Madam President, I move quickly to the removal of VAT on cement, steel, lumber, and plywood. Madam President, what does that mean for the average St. Lucian? The average St. Lucian whom we know, and it's no wonder that this has become a policy of this administration, because over the last few months, Madam President, under the housing assistance program, I have heard the reports coming out of some of the constituencies about the conditions that some of our people live in, Madam President. It is really hurtful when you either walk within the constituency and the communities and you see the houses that people live in, and a lot of it is not by choice, Madam President. It's because they really cannot do better, because some of us have to decide whether we buy a sheet of plywood or whether we put food on the table. We have to decide whether we buy a block or whether we send the children to school. That's the reality of what happens in many households around St. Lucia. And so I think that this is probably a strategy coming out of a very thorough assessment of the housing stock in St. Lucia, Madam President, and the conditions that some of our people live in. But understanding that whereas the government may have to continue to step in to assist certain persons in housing repair, but there are some persons who may be able to afford it if only the materials were a little more affordable. And so the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party, led by Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre, has seen it fit to implement that policy, Madam President, to assist in that. And Madam President, we have to understand that housing is a basic need. You go on the internet, you pick up a book on development, on any type of theory, management theory, anything, Madam President, and the basic needs, the definition of basic needs do not change. Our social studies teachers, our students understand that the definition of basic needs do not change. Food, clothing, shelter, these are the most basic needs, Madam President. And so when somebody does not have a proper house to live in, le Madam President, uni pou shift le side sa, because lela pikweve, gloka tobe an zowe you. Ebe uni pou poyan be sin me an ba tout kloua, Madam President. Madam President, your dignity is at zero, Madam President. Your dignity is at zero. And so a basic thing like having a proper house to live in is something that we have to look after for our people, Madam President. But it is very hurtful that after the Prime Minister made that pronouncement, Madam President, social media was ablaze with the comments from the detractors. Madam President, I saw a certain young lady from a community in Beaufort North who is aligned to the opposition, Madam President, who within the previous 5 years, Madam President, made extension to her house in the community, but she now sits behind her device on Facebook and say she will buy plywood to eat. That's what she said. She's going to buy plywood to eat. And I had to ask her, but where are you going to put the plywood? Next to the well-painted wall? Because it seems that she is so divorced and so devoid from the understanding that whereas she was able to extend on her house within the last 5 years, there are people next to her in the communities not too far from her, Madam President. The parliamentary rep of Beaufort North recently renovated and built houses for persons who live not far from her, who are living in bad housing conditions. But she now is going to attempt to ridicule this government because she does not need it, because Coucou il play, Madam President. Coucou ya play. Il pas brisé. But there are St. Lucians who need it, Madam President. And another young man asked me on the post, how does it benefit him? Madam President, a young man who is a teacher, whose wife is also a teacher, who's benefiting directly from the policies of this government, because come August, they will each have $1,100 extra on their salary to allow them to be able to buy materials and teaching aids, Madam President. But he does not need the plywood and the concrete because he has a well-established house, Madam President. But they do not understand that there are St. Lucians who really need it, Madam President. And so I applaud this government for seeing it fit to ensure that they put these things in place for our people. Madam President, somebody else said, they made the comment that it is only the contractors who will benefit from the removal of the VAT. Only the contractors who will benefit. Who the contractors working for, Madam President? Madam President, the reality is many of these people who will benefit from this program, yo pas ça même acheter un contracteur, Madam President. Madam President, c'est gens communes, c'est famille, foyer, c'est ça. Coup de main, yo ka fait toujours ça. Mais it means à présent plutôt yo shit plywood pour faire un 2x4. Yo ça fait un 3x6, Madam President, so maman il a plus confortable. Un chien de yo pas ni l'argent pour payer un contracteur, mais à présent yo ça bail, yo ça gagne yo shit plywood please. Yo ça gagne yo shit galvanizer, please. These are the people who these policies are meant for, Madam President. And a caring government has seen it fit to ensure that these policies are put in place within this budget, Madam President. And so I applaud these initiatives, Madam President. Madam President, like I said, there are so many things to talk about. So many things to talk about. Madam President, I want to repeat the words, some words I heard from the other house, Madam President, that this is a budget with a soul. And these words were uttered by the MP for Beaufort South, Madam President. A budget with a soul, and that's what I see, Madam President. I do not think that there is any better way to coin it than that. A budget with a soul, a budget which understands that the poor people, the marginalized people of this country need that level of support and assistance. And a lot of the times we say that, and it has been said a lot of the time, that the Labour administration likes to give people handouts. So, but when they reduce the tax and the VAT on the material that a low-income earner can now afford to buy it, how is that giving them a handout? No, that's helping them to help themselves, Madam President. That's what it is. That's what it is. Madam President, as I wind down, I just want to mention
Senator
quickly.
Shalry, you have 15 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. I will be done within this time. Madam President, works at the Beaufort Police Station Divisional Headquarters. Madam President, so often over the years I've heard the police officers in Beaufort lament the poor condition of where they've dropped them presently, because they've moved them so many times, Madam President. And the last conversation I had with a few police officers was that first shooting in Beaufort. And even on the scene of the crime, the police officers could not help themselves but tell me about the poor conditions. And one of the female police officers, Madam President, spoke to me about how difficult it is for them as young women working in the police station to have some level of privacy, Madam President, especially when they are menstruating. They do not have a proper place to bathe and to change whilst they're there, sleeping overnight at the police station, Madam President. And so, of course, when I heard that the work at the divisional headquarters will go ahead as was planned, Madam President, that made me excited, not just for me, but for them, for the men and women who are charged with the responsibility to ensure that they protect the citizens, but they themselves are not comfortable. How do we expect them to do their work if they're not comfortable within the space that they are supposed to work within, Madam President? Then I heard the Beaufort Administrative Center back on the table, Madam President, a project that many, especially young Beaufortians and persons within the southern belt of St. Lucia were excited about, not having to get up early and take a bus to come to Castries to be able to do your passport, to be able to get certificates, school certificates stamped, Madam President. You had to photocopy it and come to Castries to the Ministry of Education and come back within 3 working days to get them, Madam President, whilst you're trying to put put them in with an application to find a job. But it means the administrative center in Vieux-Fort within reach to us would mean one less difficulty, Madam President, and that was quashed by the previous administration. So I'm happy to hear that the Vieux-Fort Administration Center is back on the books, Madam President. Madam President, talk of semi-professional football. Madam President, the leader of government business can attest to the fact that I come from a family of footballers. My uncles, my brothers, you understand, they played football, but to where, Madam President, to where? Many a day I nursed hurt toes, squashed knees, all kind of thing, Madam President. Fixio. You understand, bandage, sir. I did that for my uncles and my brothers and them. And there was nowhere much for them to go, especially raising in a family and in a community where there was not much resources to even buy a proper football boots for them. But we're hearing now of talk of semi-professional football. And Madam President, I see a direct link between this and crime reduction strategies, giving the young rural men and women something to look forward to. And they normally lament, they tell you, feel put this, put that. They tell you that, and sometimes they work, they have a little job, they leave their job, beg their employer for a little time to come and play a little football, and then something happens to them and the onus is on them. But semi-professional football means that they will be able to get something out of it, Madam President, and I applaud this venture, Madam President. Identification of land for resettlement of some identified before the residents, Madam President, that is good news, and we know how much the landscape of Vieux-Fort changed a few years ago under the Kenny Anthony administration, when persons were given the opportunity to own lands in the areas of cantonment and certain areas in Opico and so on, Madam President, and the continuation of a program like that, what it means for families, Madam President, who will now have a paper that says an acreage and that says a name, and it means they can now go to the bank, Madam President, and say, I need some money to send my children to school, Madam President. That is a dream of many families, Madam President, and these dreams are going to be made reality, Madam President, by projects such as these, the continuation and expansion of the PROUD program, making PROUD into a statutory organization, Madam President, to give them that greater level of clout and that greater level of autonomy, Madam President. These are the strategies and the policies of an administration who cares about people, Madam President, and not just anybody, Madam President, but persons who in many situations cannot help themselves otherwise, Madam President. Un gouvernement qui ni ka chilio, ka changer la ni mouna dans pays sa la qui passe toujours indécor yo. Et yo pas ka just buy yo bagay pour jodi a tout seul. Mais yo ka mette bagay en place ba yo, Madam President, pour assurer yo sa indécor yo jodi a et yo ni manœuvre la pour aider maman yo et génération après yo, Madam President. Ça c'est gouvernement nous n'a supporté à Madame Président. Ça c'est gouvernement qui a gidé pays ça, Madame Président. Et tout avec ça moi voulais dire, moi supporter budget Premier ministre là pour 2023-2024, and I look forward, Madam President, to the implementation of these programs, a program geared towards putting people of this country first, Madam President. I thank you, colleagues.
Senator Antoine Prosper.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I stand in full support of the appropriation 2023-2024. But before I delve into the matter, allow me leave to wish all the students who are writing the CPA at this time, today and tomorrow, let me wish them all the best in the examination. Earlier, when I heard my colleague speak about anxiety, she didn't know how anxious I was sitting here because my daughter is writing CPA today, and I had to drop her off at the center before I reported for duty this morning. I had to calm her down yesterday when she became too anxious, but this morning she was a lot more stable. So I know she'll do well. Madam President, allow me to commend the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre, a humble and capable leader, for a well thought of, well put together, and well presented budget under the theme Health and Security, Pillars of Sustainability. Madam President, this is a budget that truly caters for the current economic and social situation on our island, as well as response to health and security needs. This budget, Madam President, is indeed a budget for the people, a budget that puts the people first. It brings relief to every sector of the economy, and the common man can relate to the impact of this budget on his livelihood. Madam President, our people listened, and they are speaking. They are happy because they understand the tangible relief that this budget brings to them, in spite of the noise, the walkout, or other strategies meant to distract them, and the crocodile tears that are shed to deceive them, Madam President. Even when they have been labeled as mendicants, backing dogs, and non-entities, our people are smart. And these tricks simply do not work anymore, Madam President. Madam President, this budget is very detailed, but I shall attempt to dissect the education component to leave little doubt on the minds of the people, especially our students, our teachers, and our parents. Madam President, the one graduate per household. Madam President, St. Lucia continues to produce intelligent, well-rounded young people who have not been able to achieve at their full potential because of economic factors. In other words, their parents have no land to mortgage, no lucrative job, no money in the bank to assist them in obtaining higher education. Madam President, this government is fulfilling its campaign promise of one graduate per household. In fact, the first generation scholarship. Ça nous vle di, Madame Président, gouvernement te fait un promesse qui nous ni tellement jeune monde cette ici qui a quitté l'école qui est intelligent. Yo vle qui manière moi ka di ça. Yo vle aller university, yo vle faire degree yo, mais yo pas ni l'argent, yo pas ni té. Avec on chay se jeune monde ça là, peut-être dans yo katwape ko yo body le l'autre côté parce que yo pas ça faire ça yo vle faire avec yo ni habilité à pour faire. Avec honorable Philippe JP te font promettre qui c'est moun ça là qui pas ni pièce mon famille yo qui j'ai fait un degree pour nous garder si nous ça twape yon jeune moun à chaque famille pour gouvernement aider yo faire un degree. Madam President, currently 284 students are benefiting from government scholarships and bursaries at a cost of more than $2.7 million. Madam President, 273 of these awards were granted between 2022 and 2023. That is during the reign of this administration. And let me give you a breakdown of these awards, Madam President. We have received from, we are awaiting for 2 students to do the UK Commonwealth Scholarship. We have 29 students who are awarded. These are students who are awarded in 2022-2023. We do have continuing students, but I'll concentrate on those who are awarded between 2022 and 2023. Monroe College, we got 17 scholarships, and that is not the 50. So Monroe College had already awarded 17 scholarships and bursaries. And for the first generation scholarships, we have given 50 students, and we shall give another 50 by the end of the year, at a cost of $520,350 to the government of St. Lucia. The government of St. Lucia Monroe College Associate Degree in Sports and Management bursaries, 18 awardees. OAS Scholarship, we are still awaiting nominees. We shall be giving 2 students. Island Scholarships, 3. Kingdom of Morocco, 20. Cuba, 10. We have assisted students with 22 students with economic cost. We have given 100 students bursaries from Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. And the stipendium Hungarian, we have 4 students. World of Serbia, 2 students. So we are indeed assisting our students and keeping to the promise of assisting our students with higher education. Madam President, in addition, the sum of $500,000 has been allocated to assist students who are currently enrolled at universities. Many of these students have procured loans to study and need additional support. Even some students who receive scholarships after COVID, we know that the prices of everything went up. And so we have to offer those students assistance. The students from Cuba were getting $150 and they said, allow us to send barrels to Cuba instead so we can buy the commodities that we need. Provisions have been made, and the students who qualify will receive grants to help defray their expenses. Madam President, we take care of the nation's youth, and we will not be distracted by the noise. Madam President, as we speak, the Department of Education is in conversation with World Marine University and other colleges in the US and Canada, as well as within the Caribbean. We are in conversation with the University of Guyana with a view of providing further tertiary educational opportunities to our young people. Madam President, early childhood education. Many of our nation's children who are at formative years are missing out on the best start to formal education because their parents cannot afford to pay the fees for early childhood education or cannot get available space at the government-owned institutions. Madam President, our government recognizes that early childhood education helps children to make friends, to develop independence, to learn routines, and develop the social and cognitive skills they need to continue to learn. It is for this reason that we have embarked on retrofitting of spaces for pre-K, early childhood education, infrastructural upgrades, and new construction. Under the OECS Pearl project, the government, through the Department of Education, commenced delivery on the promise of increased placements for children needing early childhood education. Through this project, the Department of Education has been able to retrofit spaces at 3 schools, the Dennery Infant, the Mongoose Combine, and the VA4 Infant. Work has commenced on the Soufre Infant School and will soon commence on the Bocage Primary School. The total infrastructural investment for these 5 schools is $370,000. The Bishop Gaché, the Babuno Primary, and Lakwamengo Combine will also benefit from pre-K classrooms under the BNTF 10 program. This project will also undertake the rehabilitation of the Labey and Entrepot centers, early childhood centers, as well as the construction of a new center in the community of Bel Air. So we are making provisions for areas where students have no access to an early childhood center. And we are rehabilitating some other centers because we do have some private centers. However, the parents are unable to meet the cost of sending, so these students simply stay home. And we know when the children are in the house, a lot of things happen to them. Some of them are abused, they are all over the place, so the government, a caring government, is ensuring that we give these children an early start. We give them the foundation to education. Approximately 200 preschoolers will benefit from these projects. This, in conjunction with the other 4 recently opened daycare centers in Miku, Jacmel, Grozile, and Moshi, increases the early childhood education capacity to 8.3%. Madam President, training. At least 145 parents and 25 practitioners were trained under the Parental Support Program for Early Childhood Services. So we are not only training the facilitators, we are training the parents, because you would appreciate, Madam President, that a lot of children are going astray because of poor parenting. And the Ministry of Education had to intervene to ensure that parents were trained, parents were assisted in ensuring that we raise our children well. It is anticipated that the outcomes for this exercise will impact 800 children. A further 130 early childhood practitioners received training aimed at enhancing services and practices at their centers. Some of the training provided focus on understanding and supporting the psychosocial well-being of adults and young children. An estimated 2,000 children stand to benefit from these enhanced skills and knowledge, Madam President. Technical and vocational training. We know, Madam President, that there's a serious gap in the training needs of this country. Sometimes we have to import basic skills from overseas to work in the hotel industry, and probably Senator Aziz is well aware of that. The Ministry of Education continues to focus on technical and vocational training for our citizens to equip them to meet the needs of the labor market. They intend to establish technical institutes that are aligned with the immediate and future careers. To this end, a phased transformation of 4 secondary schools into differentiated technical high schools has commenced. So we are thinking of a high school for sustainable agriculture and culinary arts, a high school for engineering and technology, a high school for construction and heritage, and a high school for media and design. And these schools will be spread across the island. They will not only be in Castries. We have PI, we have Angers, so our students can decide on what career path they want and can be enrolled in one of these high schools. Madam President, career opportunities facilitate lifelong learning and promote economic growth for our country. Madam President, outside of the secondary school system, the Education Department, under the Human Capital Resilience Project, will be seeking to graduate 1,800 individuals with Caribbean vocational qualifications in a number of areas. Our government is working and we are concentrating on providing our people with skills so that they can function in the society. Madam President, anybody in St. Lucia who is desirous of improving their skill can pursue courses in areas such as CMOS cultivation, agro-processing, early childhood administration, barbering, and the list goes on. These courses will be offered in various locations island-wide. We shall decentralize the training to facilitate persons around the island. Madam President, wakadi kinuka lani moun ki an l'école toujours ek lani moun ki ja quitté l'école qui besoin training, qui besoin travail mais yo pas ni ces skills là yo besoin pour travail. Avec nous ka faire ça possible au pays. Et vous savez qui ça qui plus belle about ça, nous savons là les jeunes moun qui ni mamay. Yo kadou yo pas ça aller faire training na puis yo pas ni personne pour ver mamay là-bas yo. Yo pas ni personne en kay là. Et que yo pas ça venir. Ou ça programme ça là ka offert un stipend so yo kan un petit kakadan. Et que yo ka juste joindre moun pour ver ti mamay yo ba yo. Là yo aller pour training na Madame Président. Côté où j'aime tant ça fait cette Lucie. Ça c'est première fois. C'est pour ça Madame Président a dit ça c'est un budget pour ces moun là. A budget to empower our people. Not a project to allow our people to remain dependent on stipends. But we are trying to empower the people of this country so that the single parents can work to assist their children and they don't have to sit back and wait for the government to give handouts all the time. With funding from the European Union, Madam President, under the JEPSED program, a workforce development center has been set up in Vieux-Fort. A virtual center is also being set up and will be commissioned within this financial year. So provision has been made to commission this center to facilitate the people from the southern part of the island. Madam President, primary education, intervention for male students. Madam President, we hear of our young boys. We hear so many of them drop out from school. It is very sad. During COVID, we lost a lot of our young boys, and sometimes you wonder why this institution has so many young boys. Madam President, we recognize that there is a deficiency in the system. For the first time ever, there will be a targeted intervention which seeks to address some of the challenges faced by male students in our education system. We know that many of our male students are not performing at their best. And the statistics have highlighted this for decades now. We recognize too that the majority of our school dropouts are male. Armed with this evidence, Madam President, we must seek to address the gap in our system. Hence, by August 2023, a first cohort of at least 30 teachers will be undertaking training in gender-sensitive instruction with a focus on teaching to reach our boys. We must must make it right for our boys, Madam President, and cater for their learning needs, their learning styles. Boys don't learn as girls, and sometimes we have one size to fit all. So we have to cater for the attention span of boys, the reading materials for boys. The girls can sit for the entire day to learn. The boys have to get on their feet. Boys learn differently. And so this is a welcome intervention to save the boys of St. Lucia, Madam President. Madam President, the feeding program. The ministry plans to further enhance the capacity of the cooks on the program by training them towards the attainment of a level 1 CVQ. Again, we are training our people so they don't have to work in St. Lucia alone. A cook can decide if they travel to another country to get a job as a cook, and they have the evidence that they have training that to become cooks, Madam President. And we are doing this in collaboration with the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. You may not know, and many people may not know, Madam President, but I have been in a school system, and you wouldn't imagine that at secondary school there are students who stay home because they have no food. This is a reality, Madam President. The plan is to expand the school feeding program into all secondary schools. The nutrient needs of students do not end on graduation from the primary schools, and there is need to promote school feeding at the secondary level. And therefore, this year, a provision has been made to ensure that we feed the students both at the primary and at the secondary level. And I know the parents will be happy that at least they are getting one more relief. Madam President, although the Prime Minister spoke about health and security, I believe that education is getting the lion's share. When you look at all those relief packages for parents and for students, this is indeed a government that takes care of the young, of the vulnerable population in this country. A government who cares about the children of the nation. This budget offers relief to all households, either directly or indirectly. Madam President, all government, you know, I don't know whether you are aware, but pensioners do not get salary increases when other government workers get salary increases. The pension is frozen. It is indeed frozen. The Prime Minister has, it's not defrosting, has made a commitment that he will, not may, he will pay all pensioners a one-off payment of $600. And it is so detailed. He tells you in November. And you hear some people say, oh, they don't plan. And if the Prime Minister had not counted the pennies and the dollars, he would not know. This is an accountant. He knows that in November he'll be able to pay every pensioner $600. Madam President, all teachers, not some, all teachers will receive $1,100 in August. In August. And there are some teachers who are temporary who do not receive a salary in August. I know they will welcome this little allowance to help them to move into their classes in September. It will benefit my children. It will benefit to the children of everybody. Madam President, as you've heard before, we are moving in fact, we are in a technological age, and we cannot leave our children behind. They must have access to technology. They must have access to the internet. And the internet package is to 5,000 households, Madam President. At $20 a package. This is unheard of, Madam President. And I know the parents have been coming. Miss Kijioka connect me. Miss Mavle package la. Because it is relief for the people. We are helping our generation. We are helping the children of St. Lucia to access the world of information. We do not want to leave any of our children in the darkness, Madam President. They have to be able to perform on a global stage and to be able to benefit from a proper education. Madam President, in addition, the allocation of $25 million for public assistance will be helping our children too. Will be helping the most vulnerable, Madam President. And we must commend the Prime Minister for the strides he's making in helping our people. Madam President, in addition, when I tell you education has so much grants and contributions, we continue to take care of the most vulnerable. Salary increases, an allocation of $25,420 to NSDC workers. A grant of $700,000 to Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. Madam President, we take care of the most vulnerable. The VA4 Special Education Center will receive $20,000. The Soufriere Special Education, $20,000. The School of the Deaf, $20,000. The School of the Blind, $20,000. The Donato School, $25,000. We do not leave the most vulnerable behind. We have to ensure that we cater for them. Madam
You have
President.
15 minutes to complete.
No problem. Madam President, again we speak about facility fees for our students. Another relief for the parents, because as Senator Gibeon was saying earlier, we have lived in the school system and we know that parents never have money for that. They have to pay facility fees and insurance. They come with the insurance money. And they tell you they don't have the money for the facility fees yet. And you may never get it for the entire year. And you cannot force it upon them. So you have to do with the meager amount that you get. Madam President, $2.8 million was invested last year. Last academic year, and it touched 2,400 homes for payment of facility fees for all primary and secondary school students. And an allocation has been made for this academic year. A welcome allocation, Madam President. Madam President, as you've heard before, the government has distributed 6,620 Chromebooks to secondary school students. Thanks to the benevolence of the government of Taiwan, they have made an additional 4,000 more devices available to us this year to distribute to the new Form 1s and the Form 4s who had the e-books, the substandard e-books that never worked, and we were paying in excess of $2 million for the licenses. We can use that money to produce the content for our children. Madam President, We continue, as we've heard before, with the bursary of $500 that parents who have children who wrote the common entrance or CPA now at the beginning of the academic year. And Madam President, there's no discrimination. Whether you're rich or poor, you get it. Whether you're yellow or red, you get it. So I am thinking that I'm going to get $500. I may decide to leave it for the government. Madam President, the former government didn't show appreciation for anything local or regional. We think of the National Trust, we think of Radio St. Lucia, and so many more. Madam President, our debt to the University of the West Indies is almost $30 million. The previous government did not pay a cent to the University of the West Indies. They did not meet our obligations. We know the value of this prime tertiary educational institution for the Caribbean. Therefore, an allocation of $2 million has been made to pay UE this year. Madam President, a step in the right direction. We cannot lose our good name for people who do not care. We have to maintain the good name of St. Lucia at all times, Madam President. We have to make it a priority. Madam President, school security. We have a responsibility for the safety of students and staff in our educational institutions. Madam President, as we speak, a consultant has been engaged and has made recommendations for the improvement of security at our schools. As Senator Ferdinand has informed you before, we understand that the VA4 Secondary School is the largest secondary school on the island with a Form 6. We need to ease the burden of administration on supervision, and an additional vice principal will be assigned to the school. The VA4 Secondary School excels academically, in sports. They just got an award for innovation, Madam President. That's my alma mater, sorry. Madam President, last week Friday, I attended a ceremony. I participated in a tree planting ceremony for past principals at the school. So they're building an orchard. So past principals can go there and pick from their fruit tree. I'm happy I planted one so I can share with the owner. Allow me to wish the VA4 Comprehensive Secondary School a happy 60th anniversary. Their 60th anniversary this year. And I look forward to seeing some of you in some of the activities to commemorate their anniversary. Madam President, infrastructure. The allocation for infrastructure was increased from $3 million to $3.2 million for rehabilitation of schools. Madam President, we all know that this is grossly insufficient, as the entire budget for St. Lucia may not be enough to carry out the infrastructural needs of the schools on the island. Madam President, however, the summer works will address deficiencies in electrical infrastructure, security at schools, plumbing needs, and these days it's mold and more mold. We are dealing with mold at some of the secondary schools, and some of this allocation will be used to deal with the issue of mold at schools. Madam President, let me take a few minutes to speak about the new hotel to be built in Choiseul. The former government couldn't build a hotel room, but I believe that the new hotel to be built in Choiseul will bring economic activity to the village and jobs to the residents of Choiseul. This government will see it, will ensure that the people from all sectors of the economy and all communities enjoy opportunities for employment. I know we are also trying to make people entrepreneurs, but we also have to cater for the people who need employment. We need employment for the mothers, for the single mothers, for the young people of Choiseul, so that they can gain some independence. Madam President, I am also happy that the perennial problem with the fishermen at the port in Choiseul is being addressed. As some of them would be stuck, would go out there at 4 a.m. to just tow their boats to the sea. And morning would come, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, because of the buildup of the sand, they couldn't go out fishing. This problem is being addressed, and thanks to the government of Japan for the assistance. Madam President, I am also happy to know that the Minister of Sports will continue supporting the footballers and the cricketers of Choiseul. And let me raise my hand in pride that the cricketers of Choiseul are in the finals of the Prime Minister's Cup. I heard my neighbor laughing because he has been defeated. And I know my colleague, Honorable Jeremiah Norbert, has been challenging me, but I'm sorry, he'll have to cry, because Choiseul will be victorious. In closing, Madam President, let me take this opportunity to thank the staff of the Ministry of Education for the hard work that they continue to do. Madam President, I pray for God's guidance on this government as they lead with wisdom and genuine care for the people of St. Lucia. I pray for the improvement of health, security, and education in our country as we continue to build a sustainable economy. Madam President, I thank you.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that this House do stand suspended until 2:30.
Senators, the question is that this House stands suspended until 2:30. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. It is suspended.
All right.
Well, we've come to the end of the first session of the live sitting of the session of Parliament, the Senate sitting for today, the 4th day of May 2023. And of course, at this sitting, the Senate sitting, the motion that is under discussion, that has been debated, is the Appropriation Bill 2023 that was presented by the Leader of Government Business earlier. And of course, the debate is being discussed here by the various members, some of the government senators so far who have spoken. And those senators who have spoken are of course, we had the presentation by the Leader of Government Business, as I said earlier. He did make the presentation and make a case for the motion, and then he was followed by Senator Mr. Jawai, and then by the Senator Kejana Shallery. Of course, following Senator Kejana Shallery, we had Senator Pauline Antoine Prosper, who is also the parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Education. And she did speak quite a bit about her ministry's programs and plans for 2023, as well as some of the initiatives for the Choiseul constituency where she is. She is not the parliamentary representative for Choiseul, but she did speak on it. We have also in the Senate today the two independent senators who are present, the two independent senators, as well, yes, the two independent senators, but notably absent today are the three opposition senators. When the session began, the president of the Senate did indicate that she had received apologies from Senator Polius, but she said nothing about the other two opposition senators in the persons of Senator Dominic Fede and Senator Harold Stanislas. There have been no word from them, but they're obviously absent from the House today, from the Senate today. So we have come to the end, but peut-être nous ça dit ça en créole vite pour Sénat là commencer aujourd'hui, ça c'est session Sénat là commencer pour 10h30 avec commencement présentation ça c'est chef façade gouvernement qui honorable sénateur Gideon Ferdinand, c'est lui qui a présenté à ce façade gouvernement. Il fait présentation à ce budget là pour l'année 2023 avec après il présentait dit tout ça que le gouvernement a fait. Après c'était sénateur Lucia qui parlait à ce façade gouvernement aussi. Il aussi parlé après c'était sénateur Kejana Shallery dans Vieux-Fort, ça c'est Vieux-Fort Nord, avec aussi après nous étions sénateur Pauline Antoine Prosper qui a fini par parler à présent. Nous aussi des sénateurs indépendants qui ici, mais comme on a dit en anglais, c'est trois façades, c'est ça sénateur à ce façade opposition, pas présent aujourd'hui, quand même. En commencement, le président a annoncé qu'il était joint en esquisse par sénateur Pauline Prosper, Angelina Prosper. Excusez-moi, c'est sénateur Angelina Polius qui était joint en esquisse. Mais dès les autres là, sénateur Harold Stanislas avec sénateur Dominic Fede par président aujourd'hui. Il continue la discussion à 10h30. Il prend un petit pause pour aller à un point déjeuner. Avec nous aussi, comme on dit, les autres membres à ce façade gouvernement qui là aussi, ça c'est sénateur. Oui, l'année sénateur, nous avons parlé. Kejana, c'est-à-dire notre sénateur, excusez-moi là, mais les 4 nous dévier à 2h30. Nous allons dire exactement qui manière qu'à continuer. Nous allons inviter pour rester puis nous dévier à 2h30 pour continuer sa capacité en disant qu'il y a un